Gamers, it's a big tea time. It's so big that we have 5 people today. That's right. We have an obscene number of gamers here on Tea Time. The expansion has dropped. Secrets of the Obscure has arrived. The expansion has landed. Very exciting times, and a lot of stuff has happened. I almost forgot that, you know, things could be different in the video game. It was something I didn't know I needed, right? You go into this, into Secrets of the Obscure, and it is just weird. You look at it, and it looks like Guild Wars 2. It sounds like Guild Wars 2, and, you know, you've got all the normal Guild Wars 2 UI, but it's really different. Like, all the characters are very weird. The wizards are weird. Everything looks weird. Everything's, like, towering and looming and spooky. It's really good. I think it's a totally new world to explore compared to anything that we've seen so far.
They had a couple of goals that they wanted to do, and they achieved those goals. And I have a feeling it's just going to keep on like building on that from here. I think this expansion was a really good foundation, and it was something that Guild Wars 2 needed for a while.
I think Wizard's Vault suffers from 3 issues. Too many noob traps for spending the wizard coin, whatever they're called. I don't know.
Wizard coins.
I like Wizard Coin way better than Astral Acclaim. Like, the alliteration of Astral Acclaim is cool, but Wizard Coin is more evocative, and also, like, I could just see a script. I could just see a script, like, asking for Wizard Coins, and I like that.
Gamers, it's a big tea time. It's so big that we have 5 people today. That's right. We have an obscene number of gamers here on Tea Time. The expansion has dropped. Secrets of the Obscure has arrived. The expansion has landed. Very exciting times, and a lot of stuff has happened, unsurprisingly. A lot of things. We've got the Wizard's Vault, the story content. We've got open world maps, new strike missions, relics are going on, weapon master training, a variety of things. So I don't know. I kind of want to open up with some just kind of more general thoughts, actually. How are we all feeling? You know, it's been just under a week now. You know, on day 6 of the expansion as of right now. What's the consensus? What are we thinking about? Secrets of the Obscure, new expansion model, new content. Does it suck or is it good? Boom. Let's go. Someone get in there. Everyone's afraid. Yeah, Sneb, go.
I just think it's okay. I don't really have any extreme complaints. There's a bunch of stuff that I think needs to be tweaked or fixed or whatever. But I'm not like overwhelmed with excitement, but I'm also kind of like, okay, well, you know, $25 value, played it about 30 hours. I will say I feel like I have kind of beat the game in a sense, right? I did all the story. I'm pretty much almost done all the masteries. I 100% of the map, and I don't really have anything to go after. So I'm kind of just feel kind of done. Like I don't really have any personal goals with the expansion at this point. So I feel a little bit lost as to what I'm supposed to do now. I guess is probably a good way to put it. But I don't think it's terrible or anything. In fact I thought the story was quite good. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was a little bit darker, a little bit different. I thought that the maps I have mixed feelings on. I thought they were very unique. I think they really hinge on the sky scale though. And a lot of the time I found myself going, man, I kind of wish that I had moments where I was using the other mounts too, but I never did. Never needed to because they're all very sky maps. So yeah, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I think I probably would have given it a little bit higher if there was more challenging content. But I guess we'll see in the next 3 to 6 months. For now, I just don't know what left to do with the expansion. Yeah.
You're not gonna do the legendary armor farm, Sneb?
No, I mean I already have.
It's a big one. It's a big one too.
Yeah.
But why would I? Is my question. Why would I go after the legendary armor when I already have legendary armor? I recognize that that's a very, there's only so many people that are in that position, but I have no reason to go after it. I have no reason to do it. It doesn't add anything to my gameplay. It would only be for the skins. And I think the skins are cool, but it doesn't seem like it's worth it to me.
I have a feeling like when the higher tier rifts come out, that it'll be much faster to get the essences that you need. So everyone that is farming them hardcore now for like hours and hours and hours just to like get like 1% progress all their work is going to be undone with like 3 hours of farming like tier 4 rifts or whatever when they come out. So it's just, oh no. I feel bad for those people. So there's no point in doing it now is what I'm getting at. Just wait.
I think this is the new format is that it does make it a little bit hard to actually judge the expansion because we know that there's actually a lot of stuff coming later. Like, I mean, there's even a huge thing that we know there's an entirely new weapon coming for each profession in about 6 months from now. And this does mean that it's quite difficult to judge the expansion because in a way, the expansion isn't fully here yet. It's going to be coming later. There's going to be a lot of new features being added to the game over time, whereas that's not normally the case. With the normal Guild Wars 2 expansion, you basically get all of the features dropping immediately, and then they just add more content between expansions. That's the way it usually goes. That's not the case this time around. The game is entirely possibly, it will look quite different in 6 months, especially 6 months' time from now. There's going to be more relics, new weapons to be playing around with, and of course you'll have the strike mission challenge modes. Because you know, I'm kind of with Sneb on this. Like I find the expansion, a lot of the things that you kind of expect from a Guild Wars 2 expansion, I think it does very well. I think they've very much reaffirmed their commitment to delivering a pretty high quality narrative experience. I think this is some of the better story that they've actually ever done. Maybe even the best. I think it's actually rather good the direction they take. I don't miss the old characters, you know. I wasn't worried about missing them. I definitely don't miss them. They introduced a lot of new characters, pretty interesting ones too. And I think the story was yeah, the story was well executed overall. I think, and I think the world building is really good. I love how weird it is. You know, Guild Wars. I almost like haven't. I almost forgot that, you know, things could be different in the video game. It was something I didn't know I needed, right? You go into this, into Secrets of the Obscure, and it is just weird. You look at it, and it looks like Guild Wars 2. It sounds like Guild Wars 2, and, you know, you've got all the normal Guild Wars 2 UI, but it's really different. Like, all the characters are very weird. The wizards are weird. Everything looks weird. Everything's, like, towering and looming and spooky. It's really good, and it's a totally new world to explore compared to anything that we've seen so far. But on the other hand, yeah, here I am on day 6, and I'm kind of done, right? And the weird thing is that the expansion hasn't really added anything to my core gameplay loop, more or less. Like, the new metas are, I mean, I don't really like them that much. Again, I think they really focused on being really cinematic, and they dodged the combat system way too much. I think the meta events are very much, they look really cool, but they're very much style over substance, in my opinion. Strike missions are actually pretty cool. I think the design, especially of the second one, Ceres, has some real good potential, actually. But obviously, it's normal mode, so you know it's not exactly difficult. It's supposed to be accessible. So that's not a criticism. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting. I've got to wait for the actual good stuff. Like rifts, in my opinion, suck. But it feels bad for me saying that they suck because I know that they're adding higher tier rifts later, and they're also adding these instance Dragonstorm style instances, convergences, in the next patch. So I might go, oh, these don't suck anymore because this type of content simply isn't aimed for me. A lot of the stuff that's in the game just does not target me as a player in any way. And this is why I find it quite difficult to judge this stuff, because I know that a lot of players who are within the target demographic of the majority of the content that's been released so far are really enjoying it. And that's where I'm sympathetic to that, because I do think that what is here does what it's supposed to do pretty damn well, actually. It's well executed for what it's supposed to be. It's just that I'm kind of waiting for the stuff that I'm interested in down the line, right, as well.
I'll kind of chime in here.
Boom. Let's go.
I was gonna say, I think I actually fall into the category of what this expansion did really like kind of do for me, because like I historically with a lot of the previous expansions, I would just zoom my way through it, right? Because I would try to like map out stuff like hero point trains, map completion trains, try to get all of the content so I can start running like training stuff or like the strike missions and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this time around, I ended up taking it a lot slower. Like I think on average in the past week, I've been playing close to 12 to 13 hours a day. And I'm only halfway through the mastery system. And it's because I've actually been replaying through a lot of the content with different people, right? So it's like I did the story on my own, and then I ended up helping some other people with it. I think at any one time, I ended up running the meta like 4 times in one day, just because there were a lot of people that were doing it for the first time. And they kind of wanted to like see what was up with it. And then the same thing with the strike missions. Like I think day 1 of the strike missions being released, I ran it like 6 times. So I think for me, this expansion was a very good social experience, because one of the really big things that I know they've been highlighting is they want especially endgame PvE and higher level gameplay to be more accessible, right? It's like they're trying to streamline a lot of the different builds. They're trying to remove a lot of bloat. So now there's not like the new elite specs, but now the weapons can be used kind of like universally. Obviously with like the relic system, it's like it's not just contingent on your runes and everything. And they kind of gave everybody 3 for free of all of the core relics. So it's like it's very obvious that they're trying to shuffle players towards this higher level gameplay. And a lot of players are taking that bait, right? Like a lot of them are trying the strike missions for the very first time ever. A lot of people are trying to like do more organized metas for like the first time ever. And I've seen it kind of like almost segue into a lot of other things. So it's like when they try the SOTO strike missions, they're like, oh, hey, that wasn't that bad. I kind of want to try the other ones. And I'll be like, you want to do an IVS 5 run really quick? And then I ended up doing that like 3 times a day as well. So it's like, I don't know. I think I'm very much interacting with the demographic that is benefiting from this expansion. And for that reason, I'm actually like really excited for it.
Can I
Yeah.
challenge you a little bit on that? I'm very curious. I actually find this to be significantly less social. And the
Really?
reason, yes, the reason I find it less social is because there is no reason to talk to anyone other than for achievements. If you're trying to, figure out where all the new achievements stuff are right now, then yeah, you're talking to other people. But the metas, they don't require you to really talk to anyone. I haven't seen a meta come even close to failure, except for the one time when it bugged out on me.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
so I'm kind of confused when you say that like people are excited about these big metas and getting involved. And when you talked about how, you ran these like 4 or 5 times a day, I didn't really find any reason to. I didn't feel like anybody needed like a commander to be like, hey, you need to go here, you need to go here, you need to go here. I felt like it just kind of happened. People just walked around and did the thing, and it was very forgiving. So there wasn't really any reason to be hyper organized.
I mean, I don't think that okay, I think there's a very big spectrum here, right? Like you have on one hand where you can kind of just like close your eyes and then face roll your keyboard and then you can beat everything. And then on the other end of the extreme, you have like the really, really like organized metas like Dragon's End on release, right? I wouldn't say that this meta is Dragon's End level of like you need that kind of organization, but it's definitely not on the other end of the spectrum either. Like I think kind of a big part of the one of the big things that I noticed is a lot of people were calling out events as they were happening because you need to do the events to get the mastery points, right? So like people in map chat all the time would be saying, hey, this event is up or this event chain is following up. You can get like these 4 achievements in the mastery thing, or meta is about to start. Do I need to get that for the story? That sort of thing. It's like, I wouldn't say it's like, oh, there's a 1000% increased amount of social interaction, but I feel like in general I saw people kind of reaching out more, and a really big part of it I think is also just the confidence to be tackling that higher level content. Like I think when End of Dragons the strike missions came out, you would have to pull teeth to get people to do the strike missions, right? Like let's just like think about the Kinding Overlook with like the turtle and stuff, right? It's like I remember hearing like this general sentiment that when they added the extra way of getting it from Giala, a lot of players are like really relieved and that they wouldn't have to try to do strike missions in like these organized groups. Whereas at least with like the SOTO one, I heard a lot of people saying like, "Hey, I kind of want to try out the strike mission. Anyone want to give it a shot?" This is just like kind of lurking in Wizard's Tower, and people would be like asking that in map chat, right? So it's like, and then of course there is a little bit of streamer bias here. I completely acknowledge that. It's like when people come into my chat and they see me doing it, and then when I'm explaining the mechanics and they think, "Oh, hey, that's not too bad," then obviously people are going to feel more emboldened to try it out. But I don't know. I guess just like in general, the sentiment seems to be more willing to take those risks, especially compared to the last few.
I
think
think
this
I
about it,
agree
yeah.
with you on the strike missions, but disagree on the rest of it. And the reason I disagree is because I'm not sure that it's anything that Secrets of the Obscure did in particular. I actually think it's more so the hype of a new expansion, because I think we saw similar stuff with End of Dragons, right? Everyone's like, where are all the achievements? Where are these locations? People are putting markers on the map, and I think that that is the most exciting thing about an expansion pack, when everyone is communicating and being social in that way. But I don't see anything that's like extra social that's going to have longevity socially. I think once people get through a lot of these achievements and the masteries, I think that will dwindle, similar to what happens with any expansion release for pretty much any game. But I do agree with the strike missions, because I think these strike missions have been fine-tuned based on the feedback they've gotten from the other ones. And these ones are just a little bit, what's the word? They're a little bit friendlier, but they're also not like, they still have quite a bit of health, but they're not.
Well, they're just not very punishing.
No.
They're not punishing.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe
I like
it.
I like the strategy they went here. They did exactly what I said they should do. They should make the normal mode very, very, very easy. Like, your goal with the normal mode strike mission, in my mind, should be that you could literally take 10 random people from the Guild Wars 2 player base, throw them in there, and they'll probably be able to beat it. Like, in my opinion, that is the goal. The only thing I think that was a bit weird, I think the health is weirdly high. Like, the first strike mission is like 55 million health. It's like, oh, that's quite a lot. You know, that's a lot of health. You know, you could probably
for an
halve
experienced
that.
player, it feels really weird, right? Because it's just like a giant golem.
Mm.
But for a player that's just
Yeah.
jumping into strike missions, it kind of gives them this artificial difficulty where maybe their rotations aren't quite as good, but they get more time in the boss and they experience the mechanics more. So they're actually kind of learning more. My take on this has kind of changed over time. I don't really mind in the normal modes having that much HP as long as there's still a fun, engaging experience for people who are just trying to get into end game content. Also, I just wanted to address something. Yes, there was a comment that said not everything has to be hyper organized. You're right. Not everything does. There isn't anything that requires to be hyper organized in this expansion. And that's what I mean. There isn't anything. And that's fine, I guess. But I don't see the longevity socially is what I'm trying to get at. But strike missions, I think, are pretty good. And I think they're going to be really fun in CM. And I think a lot of people, like Emmy said, are definitely going to give things a shot. I've seen that too. Lots of people are just trying out new things. I think people got really engaged with the story. They liked the bosses in the story and they want to try them as strikes. Yeah. Again, I'm very kind of neutral with this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I imagine I also have like a lot of bias because obviously because of the drops, there's just a lot of people being driven into content creation spheres and kind of engaging with it for the first time. But at the same time, I don't know. I think a big thing is that this expansion was very much an affirmation that what they're doing, it's working, right? It's like the fact that they're kind of like reworking a lot of these classes, making them more accessible, it's working because people are trying the strike missions at a higher level. And I feel like, I don't know, the fact that the new maps, I mean, I'm a sucker for these types of like really big cinematic things and it feels like really epic and visually it's like stunning. So I really, really enjoyed that. And it shows that they are investing into not just like the instant stuff, but also the what's it called, the open world as well. So I don't know, I feel like it's like what Teapot said, it's like I feel like they had a couple of goals that they wanted to do and they achieved those goals, and I have a feeling it's just going to keep on like building on that from here. I think this expansion was a really good foundation and it was something that Gilbertson needed for a while.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like as a player that wasn't streaming, or I was just playing casually. I just logged in on launch day, played like maybe 6 hours, and then the next day played a bit more. I was like pleasantly surprised by this expansion. Especially the story. I mean, I'll just like loop back to the story real quick. I really enjoyed it. I love the darker tone. It seems like the writers were kind of like, now that we're not playing with the old characters, they were given the opportunity to kind of rein the comedy in and, you know, make it a lot more serious, which I enjoyed. And as you said, Teapot, the world building is incredible because, like, the way this expansion ends, I am genuinely really excited for where it leads. Whereas, I guess, like, the previous expansions just didn't really feel that. I think the dragon cycle was quite predictable. We knew we were going to go kill the next dragon, and they didn't have, you know, much personality. They were just kind of these big, like, forces of nature that you were fighting against. But this feels way more personal. I'm way more interested in all the characters that they introduced. And the events, I kind of I have like mixed feelings about them. I don't think they all need to be close to Dragon's End in the sense that you need to have, you know, proper coordination and stuff. I like that sort of thing, but definitely Secrets of the Obscure seems to be leaning towards more like new player friendly systems, and like these meta events are very easy to just jump into and pug, which I don't mind, to be honest. I've done the both meta events a couple times now, and a couple times there weren't any commanders, so there was a lot of people talking in chat trying to like coordinate and guide people. I enjoyed the spectacle, and yeah, I have really no complaints with the metas, to be honest. I thought they were all right. I don't even mind the sky scale gimmick of like shooting fireballs from sky scales, because they just feel a lot more fun to control than like the siege turtles do. So yeah, I don't mind that they've been utilized in that way for these metas, and I enjoy that the masteries are really tricky to get. I enjoy that you have to do all these different events and stuff to properly get them. Because I mean, I'm not even remotely close to done with that, so I don't feel like I'm done with the expansion at all, even though I've spent maybe like 10 hours playing it. I've literally just done like the story, the strikes, metas, but I've still got all these masteries to complete, which I really want to do.
You'll
Because
enjoy that.
I am one of those people. Yeah, I mean, I bet. But I'm one of those people that don't have full legendary, and I'm gonna be taking this opportunity to get the like medium open world legendary armor. So I've got like quite a lot ahead of me, a lot of rift farming. So I mean, I'm into it. I'm into it. I'm taking the rift farming slow. I'm not doing anyone, farming it 24/7. You're gonna burn out so quick. My advice is just do the weekly rift hunting achievements, and then that's it until we get the full picture on rifts, because there's so much coming. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling pretty positive. There are a few grievances. I think there's not enough skins, and I'm a big fashion guy.
Really?
There's just not enough skins. There's only 2 armor sets, and they're not weight specific, either of them. And there's not a lot of weapon skins either. None that like really interest me. But it's weird because even though that would usually be quite a big deal to me, I think the story just left like such a good first impression that anything like the rifts or the lack of skins just doesn't have that much of an impact on me. I'm more excited than anything to like.
You think there's a
to
lack of
see what
skins?
comes next.
There's a lack.
Kind of.
I'm curious about that.
No, there seems to be quite a lot actually.
Is there?
Like with the
I
Eternal
mean-
Sword as like a thing that you can get, like that's freaking awesome. Like
Yeah, I saw there's like that sort of random variety of weapon skins and that sort of thing.
there's
I guess-
about
I
the
don't
same
know.
amount of skins as EOD, right?
I think this is something that I'd actually praise the expansion on. I think they went
I was
really.
going to say the same.
Yeah,
there's like 2 full
Ah.
in-game sets of weapons, and then there's like a set of weapons in the vault, and then there's like an exotic armor set that you can get, that you basically get in game just by doing the story, the Rift Hunter or whatever. It's basically the same as EOD.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm speaking more. It's nitpicky, but I'm speaking more towards like the armor. EOD had like three or 4 armor sets that were like all weight specific. Plus, you had like all the extra little skins, and just like 2 full sets, neither of which having like specific weight looks. It just definitely feels a little scant to me for an expansion. But again, I don't mind that much because like the End of Dragon skins, I don't end up using much anyway. I haven't changed how my character looks in a long time, so it doesn't super impact me. But yeah, just like a little gripe, I suppose. I also, I think my biggest gripe with the expansion is like rifts and how they were used throughout the story. Like the pacing of the story was weird because you would just keep coming back to these rifts. You'd like get some nice story progression, some nice character moments, and then they go, all right, go do some 4 rifts.
Yeah,
And I counted you do that like 5 times throughout the expansion, which I did not enjoy. And I don't think the Cryptus are particularly new or exciting to fight. They definitely just feel like the old enemies we've had for years and years. But, again, I feel like the quality of the story kind of outweighs that, to be honest.
They should have added some Cryptus that were like pocket raptors, like lots of little gremlin guys, and just like fuck people up. And then there'd be like all sorts of posts on the forums and Reddit about the pocket Cryptus. Wow, I'm dying. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Skins though, I'm really glad that they added the earnable mount skins. I think that's something that people were very happy about, because I remember like talking about it before. It's like you would basically have to spend like what 800 gems or something like that or more just to get a skin, just so you could recolor your mount, right? Because like the base coloring of the mount is just that one dye channel. Now you have multiple options to get skins for mounts in game, which I think I don't know. I feel like it feels good, because I remember mentioning this before. It's like if Guild Wars 2 doesn't have a subscription fee and they don't even charge you for your living worlds, then the only way that they can feasibly make money is from the gem store. So of course they're going to stick all of like the things that people want to buy into the gem store, right? But it's like now, because these mini expansions are all going to be like, we have to pay for them. Now they can actually put in those types of rewards into like more gameplay oriented stuff, right? So it's like you don't have to pay for it through the gem store anymore. Instead, you pay for the content, and then the content gives you like the stuff that you want, which I don't know. That was a really good big
Yeah.
feels good.
The
for
game
me.
now has a very
it
cheap
really-
sub fee, basically, right? Is
Yeah.
essentially the way
I
of
mean,
thinking about it, of course. Yeah.
It really bodes well for the future because I think like a couple of years ago we would have all been like, they will never give
Yeah, they will
earnable
never,
mount
ever.
skins.
Yeah, no
ever.
way.
They
No
will
way.
always
Yeah.
sell it in the store, never earnable. And it's
Mhm.
just really cool to see them turn that leaf with
Hmm.
SOTO. I really enjoy that those are earnable. There's also heaps of like emotes and stuff that you can earn as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, they've really like been quite open with the amount of rewards available in this expansion.
Yeah, I really like how
and-
a lot of the rewards are connected to gameplay as well. This is something that I liked. You know, you have to just kind of get in there and actually complete little collections to get stuff. You know, do a collection to get the new Skyscale skin. Like after you do the unlock the Skyscale and stuff, then you have the one in the vault as well, which is basically linked into direct gameplay. Yeah, and I think this is very good. It's one of the strongest points of the expansion, I feel like, actually. It's always been this kind of thing hovering over Guild Wars 2 that almost everything that's kind of cool is usually in the cash shop. That's the way it is. And I think that's becoming less the case now, which is very exciting to me. I think that's going to be very good for the game. Like, certainly, especially when it comes to new players. And this is almost like a slightly tangential topic, but I feel like this expansion is absolutely the new player expansion. Like, ArenaNet really want to draw in new players with this a lot. And funnily enough, I think the expansion being very easy is part of that, actually. Guess that sucks for Sneb. He's obviously an elitist, very toxic. But yeah, you know, I think it's very focused at new players. You know, the story makes sense on its own. You just kind of leap in there. I kind of love this stuff, actually. I don't know, maybe I'm just really silly, but no spoilers, by the way, but there are just a couple of moments in the story where it's almost like the developers break the fourth wall a little bit and just start telling you what happened in the past expansion. I just love that stuff. I think it's really funny when you're kind of there like, yeah, look, they're telling us exactly what's happened in the past expansion. They're catching us up. They're just coincidentally reading us out the exact plot line of like the previous bunch of expansions. I think that stuff's really funny. And it was very much like, yeah, new players come play Guild Wars 2. I think a lot of the systems that have been added into the game, like again, like as Emmy said earlier, right, like streamlining down a lot of these systems, adding stuff like the Wizards Vault, and honestly, we can maybe talk about that next. Actually, this is like the godlike new player system. Actually, holy shit, it's so good for new players. In terms of like gear acquisition, kind of getting started on the end game progression, which you know is legendaries, right? ArenaNet really want players to get in on the legendary train as quickly as possible, so they have stuff to do. They understand the point of the game, basically. Really good new player expansion, in my opinion. And I think, I think we will, as Emmy says, I think people are going to actually try these strike missions a lot because I think that they are kind of being prepared for that. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens when there's a daily strike mission in the vault. Because we know that can happen, actually, that they've already shown that there is a daily that says do a daily strike mission. So I think when that pops up, it'll be super interesting to see how this goes. Like, I think they've really set the foundations for potentially building these different areas of the game very well. With the strike missions being pretty easy on normal mode, with the new daily system being added to the game. Like, there's some real potential, actually, for players to get nudged into trying a wide variety of activities, including the Obsidian Sanctum jumping puzzle. You know, that's
that's been the most hours I've put of anything in this X Pack since it's come out.
Oh, really?
So,
You've been there?
Yeah. If you are matched up against my server in World v World, you will never get past the dark room. It's impossible for you to do it.
What do you do? Like, so you just
I
gang?
camp at the top of the dark room on Sikkim Soul Beast, and if you try to make a jump, you will get hit in midair and knocked, and you'll have to go back to the beginning.
How has that experience been? Because I actually haven't done that daily, and that kind of sounds
great.
fun. I'm gonna be honest. I love the griefing. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, it's literally the best gameplay that has been added in any expansion in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, sweet.
I'm not the only one doing it. It's funny. You go there. You need to have like at least 3 people with you because there's already going to be other groups of gankers in there. You have to defeat the other people, and then you find a place to perch where you can like easily like choke point people and just never let them pass. It's good. It's so good.
And I think the reason that doesn't, like achievements like or yeah, like objectives like that don't annoy me is because you get such a surplus of currency that I actually don't feel obliged to have to do like every daily or weekly or whatever. I've already got the Griffin skin, and the rest is just being spent on like the gold bags. Maybe I'll do like the legendary bag at some point, but you get so much currency that I'm not feeling, too pressured. Yeah.
That's the thing, is that I know there's people that are burning with FOMO.
Yeah, exactly.
And they need that weekly.
Yeah.
The fact that
Yeah.
they're losing 10 wizard coins is burning them up inside. And every time they try to make a jump and they get hit with a point blank shot and knocked off, is like they can just see the wizard coins getting further and further away from their vault, and they get madder and madder. And they're that much closer to hitting new tab on their browser and going to the forums and making a post about it. And every time they fall, their hand trembles and moves closer to hitting submit post on the forums about how this should never be in the weeklies, ever. Please do not do it, ArenaNet.
I saw everyone say the same thing about the mini dungeon in End of Dragons.
It's bugged.
On the subreddit, everyone's saying it's bugged.
Yeah.
And they're like, delete it. Get it out of the system. But I'm glad that it's there. I think it just kind of highlights to ArenaNet what they need to fix. Like if that's the daily for that week, hopefully ArenaNet look at it and they're like, shit, we got to fix this up ASAP. And maybe things will get fixed finally, but we'll see.
I went to go do that dungeon earlier and I didn't know. And I spent but here's the thing. I didn't know because the last time that I had tried that dungeon was day 1 of EOD and it was bugged. The same thing. I never completed it. So I thought, now's like a great time to revisit that mini dungeon. Like this is perfect. I'll get the achievement or whatever if there is one for it. It'll be fun. No, it was not fun. I went into the LFG. Well, it actually kind of was fun because of this. I went into the LFG and there was a group that was like, we are trying to spawn new instances of the map. And it was like 50 people strong. Yeah. And they were like, all right, everybody, let's take our group and move it to Arborstone. They'd all go to Arborstone. They'd all enter at once. They're like, okay, what IP is this? And they had a running list of IPs that were bugged.
They'd strike
and
out.
It was like all of them.
Look how much effort people put in for wizard coins. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
they're willing to overcome. They're willing to
look,
go
man,
for it.
put a raid in there. I'm interested to see how people come together to try and smash that up. Put it as like the special achievement.
See a special
put a raid there. I'd be interested to see what happens.
I'd have to make it emboldened. It would be like do an emboldened raid.
Sure, yeah, maybe
embolden any raid, or just do any raid, right? Any raid, but make it so that there's if you force them to choose PvE or PvP or World versus World, make it so that there's not only 4 things, login plus 3 things. Make it so there's like 6 things, so you have choice. Yeah. That, or bring it back to the way it was. I think Wizards Vault suffers from 3 issues. Too many noob traps for spending the wizard coin, whatever they're called. I don't know.
Wizard coins.
I like wizard coin way better than astral acclaim. Like the alliteration of astral acclaim is cool, but wizard coin is more evocative and also like I could just see a script. I could just see a script like asking for wizard coins, and I like that.
So it's got that issue. It's got the issue that for some reason they've taken away choice. I think it's really weird that you don't have the ability to try out new things. If, for example, this mini dungeon is bugged or you just don't like mini dungeons, you could go play around a PvP or you could jump in and capture something World versus World before. And for some people, one of the only ways that they got into this into content like PvP and World versus World was because the daily kind of poked them in that direction. And so I don't really know what the logic was behind saying, okay, well, you must choose to be a PvE player, PvP player, World versus World player. Why can't we just be a Guild Wars 2 gamer and just make decisions from there, but have like a out of 4 cap? You do 4 things, then you're done.
I think it could just offer you, if you pick only PvE, it could offer you 4 PvE things and then 1 of the other ones. So in other words, it always offers you 6. And you can only do 4 of them, right? So you cap out after you've done 4. but you always have one from the other game modes. Because I think a lot of people have been validly criticizing that, oh yeah, now you know, I'll never go, oh, maybe I'll do some PvP today, right? Because of the dailies. And, yeah, and you know what? I think that's fair enough. I think that's actually a fair criticism of the Vault. The Vault does kind of lock you in a little bit. And actually, it will almost encourage people to lock themselves in a little bit more, almost, right? Because you'll just do whatever is most efficient, right? Essentially, or whichever one you dislike the least, pretty much, when it comes to getting the Vault done. So I think that more options, but giving it some kind of cap would also be a pretty good thing. And yeah, the noob traps. The noob traps have got to go. I would honestly love to speak to the dev who designed this. It was probably Roy. I bet it was Roy. Because I don't understand the thought process. Why did they add amazing, super cool stuff like Ascended gear? I love the Legendary Starter Kit. So good. It's like 500 golds worth of stuff that just kickstarts your journey. And by the way, on the new player stuff, I love that they added collections for every single legendary weapon and armor in the game. Really good. That's really neat. And I hope that they continue to improve that interface so that players can get into that easier, right?
Wait, what do you mean by? Can you clarify what you mean by that? Because I'm not sure what you mean. As in, they've added.
Yeah. Go. Are you in game? Go look at the.
I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna look at this. Go look. I saw.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I don't think it's for like every set, to be fair, but like for a huge amount of legendary. I think particularly for legendary weapons, there's actually like a collection that kind of tells you what to do. Right. It basically has all of the individual little things that you need to get within that in this collection. So it will actually basically give you like a checklist of stuff you've got to do to check it out. It's in if you go to.
I saw that for the legendary armor, like the new one. I saw like a collection tab that just had all the different components, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. I hope they do that for the other legendaries. But if they've already done that, that's
they
sweet.
have done it. Yeah, if you go take a look at I'm just showing it on stream now. If you look at legendary weapons, you can just click on all of them, and it gives you like a step by step of what you might need of like some of the key components to getting the legendary, really right? So it actually does
that.
It's
a little unfortunate though, because if you like click on one, you get like 14 notifications all down the side, and it does like a ton of it's honestly it's more funny than anything, because it's like it'll only ever happen once. But I found that kind of amusing. But
it's a really cool idea. I think overall a really cool improvement.
So before we move on, I want to give my take on the X-Pack big picture.
Oh yeah, we didn't get your take on that. Hit it hard. Let's go.
So it's weird. I'm very divided in that I simultaneously think it was a successful X-Pack and achieved what it set out to do, while simultaneously personally having no interest in replaying any of the content in it. I did the story. I did map completion on all 3 of the maps, and I went back and unlocked all of the good relics that will be needed for meta builds, and I'm literally done until the next patch. Like, I don't have any need to do those face roll strikes again, unless they somehow come up as a daily, and I have no need to do the metas for any conceivable reason whatsoever. So it's clearly just not. Like, whatever they intended to be the replayable factor is just not for me. But that doesn't mean it's not for everybody. And I think it's a success in what they were setting out to do. They weren't setting out to make an expansion to please me. So I can kind of take a step back and realize that they've achieved their vision, but it wasn't necessarily like something that like necessarily makes me happy.
I would agree with that.
And I think the big issue with Rifts relative to some of the other things is, like, I understand the idea and I agree with the idea that you launch the system with the X-Pack and then expand upon it in the follow-up patches, but it needs to be a fully fleshed out system at the launch of the X-Pack, and then the expansions patches expand upon a finished system. If you launch it like Rifts, a half-finished system, and then you finish it with the follow-up patches, people are going to have a negative opinion of that. Whereas if you launch them in a fully finished state, and then you add even more cool stuff later, then people will go, "Oh, that's awesome." But yeah, and as far as like the Weapon Master thing, I think people would generally have probably preferred to reverse the order and give us the new weapons with the X-Pack, and then do the other weapon, like the homogenization of the weapons in one of the follow-up patches. Story was fine. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was a step up from anything to do with dragons, and there's some good character depth there. The thing that the only time I found myself getting frustrated was touching on what Bloom said, was when they ask you to go do a bunch of rifts in between story steps and normally, and in fairness, the normal thing they would do is make you go do hearts. If this was a different expansion, they would just say, go do 20 hearts and then come back for the next story step. I guess rifts are better than doing hearts. At least it's like sort of to do with combat. You know, you're not dancing with cows or whatever, or like talking to Tengu in the swamp and trying to convince them to be better Tengu. I don't know.
True. I forgot about
so yeah, I don't know. I think overall, it took me about 12 hours to do everything. Like probably 7 or 8 hours of story and map completion, and then the strikes, and then unlocking the relics. And yeah, $2 an hour, that's fine, especially since I'm getting follow-up patches that are going to give me more hours of entertainment as they come out. I think that's a fair deal. But yeah, so I can't say I'm like disappointed. I got my money's worth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just wish the rifts were better. I wish they had just launched the rifts as a fully fleshed out system that felt like it was a finished product, and the follow-up patches add more to it instead of the follow-up patches finishing the system.
I definitely think that rifts, if I had to point out one misstep with the expansion, it would be rifts. I think aside from rifts, everything, I want to say, went according to plan. Ish. More or less. Like, there's a few creases to iron out with stuff like the vault, but yeah, rifts are the outlier that I just think, yeah, I'll see you in 3 months, right? Yeah, when they've actually finished them.
I'm curious to know what everyone here thinks the rifts need, because I know that they need to be better, but I'm not really sure specifically what would make them better, because I just find the Cryptus like fundamentally not that interesting to fight, and I don't know that like adding more of them or like harder versions of them would help. I have no idea. I feel like it needs that thing that like the Rift Stalkers had, where like you go into this separate arena once you've killed enough of them, and you fight like a big actual like boss Cryptus that's like a completely different enemy model, different move set, that sort of thing. I don't know.
I think there were some bosses with the Cryptus that were pretty interesting. I'll be honest, I didn't pay attention to what tier they were, but when it summoned like the Gluttony or like the Anguish, whatever it's called, and they actually had some pretty interesting ones. I remember one where it jumped on you and it started doing like the Samurag like slam over and over again. I remember thinking, oh, that's an interesting kind of like callback to like Wing 4, which was, I mean, they hinted at the ties between them. But I think for me, a really big thing is I didn't really see any reason to do rifts. Like, I don't know if like I just like missed something really big, but like outside of the story, I never really did rifts unless I was just kind of like, I ran into one in the middle of map completion, and then I was just like, okay, I may as well do this to get event credit. But I don't know. I feel like I also found the system where you had to like double click an item in your inventory to make it to make you like scan for tier 2 instead of tier 1. I thought that was kind of weird as well, because unlike Teapot, my inventory is pristine. I don't like to have random things just sitting around in there. So feeling like I needed to have this random item just so that I could scan for the higher level rifts felt a little bit strange. But I'll be honest, I haven't really interacted with the rifts at all after I finished the story.
Yeah, it's a bit of I think on the motivations, it's a bit of an anti-Guild Wars 2 system, right? I'd expect to see that mechanic. In fact, they actually had something a little bit like this in New World, but they actually scrapped it because it was annoying and nobody liked it, right? So, yeah, I feel kind of the same way here. It's just so weird. It's like, okay, so if you want to get the higher tier rift, you're going to have to get the higher tier thingy. And then if you want to get better rewards, you have to throw it into the rift, and now it's gone. So you have to go craft another one from the lower tier rift, or buy one, so you then end up losing gold. It's this is like a very anti Guild Wars 2 thing. It's like this arbitrary inconvenience that's been added to the game for no particular good reason, in my opinion, other than to realistically, as I suspect, it's probably to drain gold out of the economy, but kind of in a slightly annoying way, right? Is kind of what it seems to be.
It doesn't help that also tier 2 rifts
Yeah.
are like still not fun, like relatively speaking to like other content you could be doing with your time. Like if like the tier, if you were like investing gold to craft this item, then you go craft this one use item to get like a better reward.
Yeah.
But it gave you at least an engaging fight that and also a really good reward. Then you could go, okay, that was so worth it.
And do you know the funny thing is that this is what MM said. I was about to say this actually. It's so true. You'll love this, Sneb. Everyone leeches off you. So if you open a tier 3 rift, they don't pay for it. You do, right? And they all leech the rift off you. It's like,
Wait,
what does
it cost?
How much is it?
Actually.
To be fair, this price is actually inflated. I will just quickly check the price though. But obviously this will go down, right? Because people are still figuring it out. So a tier 3 rift item right now is 10 gold.
Oh.
Wait, so to spawn a tier
Like, you're
3
gonna
rift?
make me pay for it.
Yeah.
Mark my words, they're gonna make me pay
Whoa!
for it.
I didn't even understand this at all. You're telling me that if I do a tier 2 or tier 3, it actually costs me gold to do it?
No, to spawn it in the first place, you need an item to give you to
Yeah.
promote it up to tier 2. Or
So
tier
it's a
3.
weird thing.
Oh.
If you
Oh
can,
no, we've just broken Sneb.
yeah, he's mentally destroyed. If you have one of them, you can.
These.
Yeah. If you have the thing, you can track the tier 3 rifts. Then if you throw that item into the rift, it gives you like big rewards. Well, big legendary armor rewards, basically.
I'm kind of stunned. I'm really not even sure what to say. That's just so bad.
It should just have been you kill a tier 1 rift, you get a T2 coin.
Yeah, and then
kill a
it
T2
upgrades
rift,
like that,
you kill
yeah.
you get a T3 coin. You get the T3 coin, it does nothing now, but when you kill it, eventually there'll be a T4 or the instanced or the legendary badass ones. Like, why not do that? Like, why make us go through a crafting simulator? And I know it's to drain gold out of the economy, but come on. Like
the essences should be able to just be combined like in your inventory. You just double click the lowest tier and it promotes it to that item that you need to get the tier 2 ones and on. Yeah.
What are the rewards even from rifts? Okay, let me just give my take on rifts quick.
Yeah.
Before I knew this information, I'm going to travel back in time to like this moment where I was ignorant, I didn't know, and I was just this innocent little goose. Anyway,
he's actually broken. He's broken, guys.
I actually quite liked the idea that I could be like, I want to spawn my content right now. I think that concept is really, really good. We're going to do an event. I'm going to spawn it. We're going to go chase it down. That's cool. It sucks. I'm just gonna ignore what you told. That's bad. But
it's real, Sneb. You can't deny it.
It's so painful. I think where rifts kind of struggle for me is that everything feels exactly the same, and there is nothing to do really. Right? I think Emmy, you said it earlier. There wasn't really a reason to do it. What are the rewards even? I don't even know why I was doing them. It felt like I was getting nothing.
The rewards are the essences for legendary armor. That's basically it.
That's the problem.
And I think that's
then.
a failure of the system. Yeah, it needs something extra for people that don't want to do legendaries. Something that can be sold even.
You can't sell
just
those?
can you sell essences? I don't know.
Well, you can because you can make them into motivations and then sell them to players who want to do legendary armor, right? So you in a convoluted way you can do this. So what you can do is you can earn the essences, craft them into the motivations, and sell them back to players. This is a weird thing about the expansion, though. We kind of just touched on it there. A lot of rewards are account bound. A lot of stuff. There's not a lot of stuff that you can sell to other players, and I think this is kind of an intentional choice. I think they want players to consume things, like delete them, rather than like funneling them into the economy, right? Which, we've seen some issues with this, like over the past couple of years, I want to say, right? That the economy is having difficulties keeping up with just like how much stuff is getting thrown into it. So I think they've tried to slow that down a little bit while adding some pretty aggressive sinks. And how, like, you can get the 3.5K golden, I'm rich, title, like with the golden tick or whatever. It's like, yeah, that seems to be the way they're going with this, which, that makes sense, by the way, because this does help kind of stabilize the economy and make that healthier. So I understand why they're doing that, but I think they've got to be really careful not to annoy the players too much, because I feel like research notes were basically their attempt at doing this in End of Dragons, and they are a bit annoying. They're not the most fun system to engage in the entire universe. Good for the game, but not necessarily good for the player. And I think that ArenaNet need to be really careful when they're designing these systems that are meant to stabilize the economy, that they aren't too much of an encumbrance on the player base, right? They don't want to make their game too annoying, right? Just to make sure the economy is stable.
I'd like to point out that they did do one thing that I know is actually pretty controversial. I like that they consolidated the currency for all of the shards and stuff. And I know that they've actually had a history of doing this, right? Because they consolidated the dungeon currency at some point as well. So I was a very, very big fan of this, and I was very vocal about it because I feel like half of like the stuff in your wallet, people don't really engage with it at all. So if they're going to set up a pattern where it's like, they release an expansion, it's using a specific type of shard, and eventually they kind of like consolidate all of those currencies as new expansions come out, I feel like that's really, I don't know, maybe it's just like, it's just me, but I know some people were kind of like against it because for one, it was like very jarring for like the player because there wasn't really that much warning on it. But at the same time, I had like 5,000-6,000 IBS shards that were just sitting there, and I was able to instantly buy all of like the EOD like skins and infusions and stuff, which I thought was really nice. And then on top of that, that's just like one less currency type that I have to micromanage. So I do think that was really nice. And I kind of like agree. I think like a lot of the stuff being account bound was kind of annoying. I think actually a really big thing is you can't deposit the essences. So they're kind of just sitting in my inventory, which also makes me kind of sad. I vaguely remember, I think it was one of the devs came into my chat and they confirmed that was unintended. So I have the feeling that it's going to go back, unless I got debated by someone like pretending to be a dev. But yeah, I don't know. And then I also think I was gonna bring this up, and I'll just go ahead and bring it up now, but maybe just a thought bubble. I don't have any like takes as to whether or not this is good or bad, but the fact that tier 3 rifts you need an item and then everybody can kind of leech off of the commander, couldn't a likely scenario for that be? Isn't that kind of like what World vs. World does, right? Is like usually the commander has like all of like the different blueprints and everything, and they put it down and then everybody else crafts it. In a way, I guess, isn't this kind of like a soft system like that? I could see like people intentionally grouping up and then funding the commander to use those crafting materials and currencies.
You would want like a guild
it's hard to say,
do it,
right?
where like, like 10 motivated, no pun intended, people who are like organized as a group doing it, and they run like private tag with like the tag hidden on the map so plebs can't leech out of like, or plebs can't easily find where they're going, and just try to do it privately with as few leechers as possible, which is also very anti Guild Wars 2's system. So it's a system that encourages guilds to try to evade the general community in the open world and like achieve things without the general community being part of it, which that might not be intended.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely
feels
feels very
right though, Emmy. Right? Like you're totally right, because it's really it's a social experience, right? What you're doing is you're saying, hey, if we all want to do this, then everybody chip in and let's blast, let's go. The problem is that you can't. It's not like you can force people like, all right, join squad, pay 10 gold. Like your tag is there, people are just going to follow you. So like Nike said, what's going to end up happening, I think, is probably something similar to what happens with a lot of the harder meta events, like Dragon's End, where people are like, all right, we're going to like stand at the gate in the other map, and we're going to try to make a new instance where only the people that are part of our guild or community or whatever can get in. And that creates this divide in the community that is, in my opinion, kind of anti-Guild Wars 2, because you want sharing of knowledge. You want people to all just hop in there. So I'm kind of conflicted on that one. I think it can be very good, like World versus World, where everyone's kind of chipping in, but it kind of has to be a private thing in order for that to work properly and not be at the disadvantage of the commander.
Yeah, I'm thinking actually what I was thinking more in my head is back in the day with the arc based in multi-meta loots, right? Where you just have some people camping specific instances and then people would like toss tips at them voluntarily. I guess like I don't know. Like, I do agree. I think this is very anti-Guild Wars 2, but I could see some systems where it works out so that the commander is not the only one bleeding money, if that makes any sense. Like if you were like a tag and then you like, you know, created a squad and you had a like 50 or 100 of these T3 rifts that you could spawn, and then like you could maybe like tag up and be like, tips welcome. Like I don't know how I don't know how common this is on EU, but I know on NA this is actually very common, right? Like when people run HV trains, they kind of like expect tips to some degree, or like if they do like I've even seen people like running raid training saying that like tips are appreciated, but I don't know. I definitely think it's not the best system, but I feel like it could be worked around if it's not addressed by the game itself. So
Well, I'll say this. I am very happy. I already have all the legendary armor I ever need, and I'm not obligated to engage with this system whatsoever to finish legendary armor. And anyone who is obligated to do it, well, that sucks for you, and maybe try raids.
Well, I was gonna say actually, I'm glad like the grind is so long for these, which I think everyone kind of expected, because if the open world legendary was way easier than raids, then raids would be like, almost dead for most people, more than they are already. But I'm glad that grind is really long and tedious, because it means that raids aren't gonna die. I think that it's going to get people interested in legendary armor, but then they'll find out that raids are actually like an easier avenue for that, and might actually start raiding perhaps.
Yeah, they definitely had to make the legendary armor a bit grindier for sure for open world. Otherwise, it would have utterly obsoleted raids more than it already does. I think we'll actually have to see like how long it's going to take once all of the tiers of Rifts are out. And definitely the convergences as well. I think it's still entirely possible. I'm pretty sure, actually, that given the choice, most people would rather grind the rifts and do raids. That's my initial take. Given like the culture of Guild Wars 2, basically when it comes to instance content, especially seeing as rifts are very, very easy, right? Like they're just you can just kind of just chill out, just blast out a couple of rifts. You'll get there in the end. Fill your entire inventory with essences. Have a good time. With that one. But yeah, it is a big grind. It's like 1k rifts at the current rates or something like that, or like 1.5k rifts. It's like, that's gonna take you a while, right? That's even if you start, the thing that's really funny to me is that the armor is out in 6 months, and even if you start now, that's a lot of rifts. Like it's a lot of rifts.
What are you talking about? You said 1k Dragon's End, so the rifts are like trivial compared to that.
Well,
totally doable to
look,
do 1k rifts.
1k Dragon's Ends. It could be done. That's all I'm going to say. It could happen. It could happen.
1k rifts could be too.
Yeah. Maybe that thing is you can't do them in parallel. You have to do them in sequence. That's the difference, right? Whereas the dragons, that you can do them all at the same time. So
I also want to point out, I don't know how true this is, because all of my legendary armor is from raids, but can't you do like bits and pieces of each, right? It's like you could get 1 or 2 pieces of the legendary like armor set from PvE, another set from World vs. World, or another one from PvP, right? It's like chest and like helm you can get from one game mode, and then get like the leggings and boots from another game mode. So I feel like you can kind of break it up. Obviously, it kind of sucks if you don't have the entire armor set, but I don't know.
It's the fastest way around the time gates.
It is,
yeah.
Because
Exactly.
they're all time gated. So if you do all of them simultaneously, then big value.
Yeah, I guess raids is a bit different because you get the full set of the precursor armor when you do the Envoy collection.
Yeah.
But my understanding is from PvP and World vs. World, you can do piece by piece, which actually I will also point out. I think that will hopefully ease I guess the grindiness of even this new open world one, right? Because you can grind for like, I don't know exactly how many you need, but let's just say like 100 rifts, right? And you can make one piece right there. So then that's just infinitely unlocked conveniency for you. And then you can slowly work towards the other ones and then build it up. Whereas I feel like, I mean, obviously the other example to this is like legendary weapons or trinkets, where you have to do the entire achievement, the entire crafting process before you unlock the, I guess, final pinnacle item that you want. So I don't know. I feel like it seems okay.
So I know the rifts, we're all just assuming here that the follow-up patches are going to finish the system and make it better. That might be a copium take, actually, and there's a very good chance that the follow-up patches will just be completely worthless. They'll finish the system, but it'll just be a worthless finished system.
Well, my prediction is that the highest tier they'll go is like what a DRM boss would be. Maybe.
That's your highest hope.
Well,
Your highest hope is DRMs.
I'm not really that mentally affected either way because I don't think rifts are necessarily going to be the most important thing for me to do because I don't necessarily need the legendary armor. So I'm not really emotionally invested in them either way. I just think that the highest tier that they would ever go is probably something like that kind of boss. And frankly, that wouldn't be that bad because you wouldn't have to do the whole preamble of the DRM. You just it'd be like a legendary boss that's like a few mechanics, right? And that's not too bad. And I think that actually helps prepare people in some way for instance content. So perhaps that's a good thing. I
I'm
don't know.
always a big fan of continuity when they can like kind of like hint at instance content mechanics by introducing them in open world. Actually, I guess like a good example of that is in the latest meta, right? I found this out literally yesterday. You have to stand in the green, otherwise you get like ported into like the netherworld, and it's pretty likely that you'll die. I feel like they've been really emphasizing mechanics like that, I think, in the past couple of expansions, which I'm kind of a fan of.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things they've done well. Although they have to kind of make up their mind on this, though. Like, one thing that I would say that goes against that is that the greens actually work differently in open world sometimes compared to the strike missions. They have this problem with spread mechanics as well. Like, spread mechanics don't work the same in strikes as they do in raids. So ArenaNet actually do need to figure this out. They need to figure out what they want to do. Because in open world, you can't stack the greens together. If you do that, you actually get punished. Everyone gets nuked. It wants you to kind of split and divide players into each green circle. But in strike missions, you can stack all of the green circles. You can like stack all of them up and then stand in all of them together. This is weird, and they need to be very careful with that because, of course, this means, you know, your goal with this type of design would be, oh yeah, a player has seen this mechanic in open world and they're therefore able to apply that understanding when they go into something a little bit more challenging. But right now, sometimes you actually get trolled by that because you go, this is how it works. Then that actually isn't how it works in some of the instance content. So it's a good idea. I really like it, but they need to be consistent with it. It is really important.
Yeah, I remember actually one criticism of that is the arrow mechanic and the Dagda strike mission. Like literally every other arrow mechanic in the game. Of course, it's like dark red and that sort of stuff. Like think like Kadim when he like shoots the projectile at you. You want to move away from the group and handle it by yourself, right? But like this one, even though it's green, my first instinct when I saw that arrow is like, get out of the group, right? Like let's see like what happens. And then of course that's like not how you handle it, right? So
I'm glad. I mean, I would have been confused as well, but I'm glad it gives you a little text pop up saying you gotta stand behind your allies, and then you see all your allies run away from you as you're pulling this around. They're like, no. I think it's a cool mechanic. You gotta stack in a line, you know, a little interesting, little spicy. I like it. That's all right.
Yeah, like I agree. I think the green was like a good color choice for that because I mean historically green means that you want to like stick together and everything, but it was the exact same arrow as like the Kadim like projectile, and I was like, gotta run away. So that was like my first.
I feel like it needs to be like a solid block that has the little like green arrows pointing into it, like the stack one does, instead of like the arrow AoE. But yeah. I'm gonna move the topic on a little bit. A little related to strikes is you know, a big reward for completing those strikes for the first time is the relics from those strikes. Which, what do we think about relics? Because I really like the secrets of the obscure ones. I think they're really interesting and have some cool interactions. I think the base ones are a little underbaked and a little meh. Some of them are cool. Some are just like not. I don't know. It's it feels like a little bit of an unbaked system at the moment.
Yeah. I actually have a lot of thoughts on that. So I think I agree. I think the core relics are kind of boring, but I think that's good. I think if every relic you had to like really change your gameplay in order to get the maximum value out of it, that can be very exhausting. So I like that they're almost like soft tiering in that, right? It's like if for like power classes and stuff, a lot of people probably know like the relic of the thief is really good because as long as you're hitting people or hitting enemies with stuff that's not your auto attack, you're getting those stacks and you just get the damage up front, right? But then like kind of like the next step above that is firework, where it's like you have to specifically use a skill that has higher than 20 seconds and you want to like kind of space it out. So there's already been like a ton of rotations for like Reaper and stuff where you'll intentionally delay your skills to get maximum uptime with firework, and you actually end up doing more damage for it. So I kind of like that. And then I think there were some relics that were in theory like so cool. Like I mean, I imagine a lot of people know this now with like the Maban relic, right? Where it's like when you use a certain number
Yeah.
of like might stacks and stuff, then you kind of like buff everyone around you. But that
That's
ended up
bugged.
being a bug. Yeah, it's not intended. I thought originally that's like such a cool idea, right? Because then you can kind of time almost like your might providing with like the
Yes.
relic itself, which completely changes your gameplay, right? So like for
Yeah.
example, on Druid, you might save your CA when you know it's about to come up, or on Herald, you might save like the might stacking facet when that's about to come up. But I do feel like now that they're taking it away, that is a little bit lame. But I
Are
think
they taking it away? What do you
because they
mean?
confirmed it's bugged, right? So it's like
Oh.
I don't think it's gonna be worth running after they like because I my understanding is right now after that 8 seconds of Maban's strength is up, it removes only your stacks.
Yeah.
But supposedly it's supposed to remove all of the stacks that you gave. So
Oh,
I
really?
don't that's what I've been told. Take that with a grain of salt. I might have like misunderstood, but that's my understanding. It's like it's
Okay.
not supposed to give the stacks to other people. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, I
It's
think
good.
actually one of I think my favorite relics that I've heard so far is where you have to when you like disable a foe, you get like bonus torment and burning. I thought that was super cool because a bunch of like new scourge rotations have popped up with that for like with like Akeem. And it maybe I'm really biased because it reminds me a lot on Mesmer how it's like you can boon rip if you disable foes, which is pretty like massive in certain fights, right? So Harvest Temple CM being an obvious one, but also on like other fights, like you could handle no pain, no gain and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think that the relics are pretty cool. I think I don't know. I kind of wish that there were more interesting ones, but
Yeah. I was
Basically,
expecting
I
a
was
bit
just
more.
gonna say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say like the ones like the thief one where it's quite easy to upkeep because it's just pressing your normal buttons and you'll get the 10%, strike damage. Or
It's not hard
15,
to
whatever it
upkeep
is.
on Bladesworn.
Yeah.
Have fun with that.
It's I feel like it minimizes some of the more interesting ones, like the Isgaran one that gives you like the 10% strike damage when you dodge something. It just feels like there's a lot that give you that 10% strike damage under a condition, and so they're all competing, and some are just way easier than others, which I think is a shame. I think they should all require like a bit more interaction than that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, people are already referencing the 50k scourge. I will say that
It's a
is
good one. Good build.
That's the one thing I have to flame the community about. Like every X pack ever has
that's
created
always-
balance issues, and they all get resolved relatively. So people that are like, "I'm quitting the game over this," or "I'm mad about the balance," or "What's wrong with the devs?" It's like, dude, is this like your first ever video game that you've ever played? Is this your first MMO expansion ever? This is how it works. They introduce new stuff. Some of it's too weak, some of it's too strong. They fix it in the balance patch, and then we move on. What complaining about this is noob stink. It just means that you are completely out of touch with how video games work in general, and you're just mad, and you want to share your mad with everyone.
I'll put it in a slightly nicer way because I completely agree with that. I think I actually find it to be quite fun. Maybe this is a bit of a spicy take, but like whenever like I always use League of Legends here as an example because they're kind of notorious for doing this. Anytime they release a new champion, it's usually really strong, right? It's like really broken, it's really overpowered. People have like don't really know how to handle it. And then during that time, everybody's trying it out. It's flavor of the month. They sell a lot of skins. And then over time they kind of nerf and start cutting it back. Right. So I feel like I know that in MMOs, it's a little bit different, especially in MMOs that don't have regular balance cycles. But to ArenaNet's credit, they have been doing very, very regular balance patches. Like I always tell people, like in the past 3 years, we've probably gotten more balance patches in the past 10 years combined. So like they're actually
Yeah.
so they're
Some of them are emergency ones too.
yeah. So it's like I feel like at least so far, obviously there's a lot to criticize ArenaNet for, but at least so far, I feel like they've genuinely listened to the advice and the feedback on some changes, and then they actually iterate on that and then either revert changes or listen to them. Like the example that I always use is like when people were really upset about whatever the like the scrapper well change was and people
Yeah.
made a fuss about it, they actually reverted it. I feel like they would not have done that 7 years ago. So it's like I feel very similarly about this most recent balance
Yeah,
patch
it's
where
fine.
like there's somewhat
It's
there's
busted.
like
It's
some,
no problem. It's not a big deal.
yeah,
When-
and
when
just
POF
enjoy it,
launched-
right? Just have
You had
fun
like, did you have
with
like
it. That's how
60k
I feel.
DPS builds on POF launch? It was insane,
Yes,
right?
like
It was actually
Firebrand
ridiculous.
had like 100k opening bursts on bosses in raids.
Yeah.
Like, come
Yeah.
on, like this, like it's the Wild West when Xbox
Yeah,
launched. That's just how it is. And
Yeah.
play
I-
a video
I-
game and like before.
Nobody should expect it to be balanced immediately. In fact, I would have been amazed if something wasn't broken. And you know what? I'll go one step further. In my opinion, it is way better for something to release broken and then they nerf it than it to release and it sucks. And
If
it's just
every single
trash,
relic was
right?
trash,
Oh,
people would be
oh,
shitting on the system.
Oh my god!
If every relic, if the only usable
Oh.
relic was Relic of the Thief, like if
Yeah.
that was literally the only usable relic, people would be so mad. And
Yeah.
deservedly so, because like
Mm.
the selling point of the expansion was the expansion relics. Although I would say I would like there to be an expansion relic for power builds that was worth using.
Yeah.
Besides, well, I guess some of those are, yeah, the other ones
It's
are
literally
core.
only Thief and
Like fireworks are
right?
core,
Yeah.
right? So like, yeah, they're all the good ones for power are core. And I'll also say, anytime there's a Condi meta in PvE, it's terrible. It's just not fun, and the devs need to fix that.
Mm.
If power builds aren't the best, then the game is in a bad state.
I like relics. Relics are interesting.
Yeah.
However, I gotta say,
Mm.
when I don't have a legendary relic, the whole time I like glitch out, man. And I recognize that this is just pure laziness,
need
but
it.
bear with
Give
me.
it. Hand it
I
over.
look at it and I go, I don't really want to engage with this until I can just straight up buy the legendary relic and be done with it, so that I can just switch on the fly. Because having to organize it on all my characters, I get like overwhelmed by the prospect of having to do that, and I just don't. So I'm waiting for the legendary, and it'll be really good. Isn't that coming out in like 6 months?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got 6 months.
Well, hopefully my significant progress that I get for having legendary runes means I can just insta-buy it. I don't have to do anything like tier 4 rifts. If I can not engage with the rift system to get that relic, I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah, I was definitely expecting relics to be a little spicier, and there are a few of them, right? You know, maybe this is silly, and maybe I'm dumb, but I just kind of wish that stuff like Relic of Saros was busted. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like the giant eye just like just destroys. That's kind of cool. You know, I was expecting more relics in that kind of direction, right? You know, that kind of stuff. A lot of them, I think they're actually a bit better. Like, for example, if we take a look at power builds, it basically says, you know, for example, fireworks, Relic of Fireworks, is whenever you use like a long cooldown skill, you get a damage buff. That means it kind of interacts with your rotation a little bit, right? Yeah, okay, that's better than Scholar, right? You know what I mean? It's better than Scholar Rune. Same with the Thief Rune. It's kind of, you've got to chain together, you've got to keep going with your attacks to actually, you know, maintain that buff. Yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. And that's that's where relics have gone a bit more, is they're a bit more active. I have to say, I'm almost like a little, I'm not sure how I feel about a lot of them activating on elite skill or heal skill. That seems to be not quite as good, if that makes any sense, right? Because you almost, you don't want to be forced into using your elite skill on cooldown to activate this effect. I think that's maybe not quite as good. But overall, I definitely think that relics can be really cool because separating the stats from the effect does really free up the type of combination you're looking for. You know, when I'm looking at, say, a heal build, you know, there's loads of pretty attractive relics now, whereas otherwise you were kind of locked into monk a lot of the time. And this was, you know, quite similar with you know, with Scholar Rune and, you know, for power builds, right? And in, you know, in other game modes, right? In PvP and World versus World, I think it's not quite there yet, but I think there are actually some pretty cool combinations that you can come up with. So I think it frees up this customization system a fair bit. But yeah, I definitely echo the sentiments on legendary relics. To be frank, I think a lot of the perhaps issues that maybe, you know, some like very, very sweaty players might have, like myself, Sneb and Nike saying like, yeah, what am I doing, right? Like after the expansions come out, if the relic had dropped with that and there was like a pretty big grind or collection to go after, yeah, I think people would feel differently, right?
Yeah,
like
I would be engaged with
yeah.
with getting that right now.
The expansion is it feels like it was missing that big chase item on launch, right? Yeah, we know it's coming in 3 to 6 months, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. Awesome. There's cool stuff coming in 3 to 6 months. Great. But I definitely think that there needed to be something on launch. And the Legendary Relic was perfect, right? It was literally the perfect item. They've brand new system. They've added all these new relics in. And now your quality of life is downgraded. GG. Now I've got to carry around like 10 relics all the time, which is like, oh, okay, GG. Feels bad.
Maybe a bit of a take here. So I agree. I think having the chase item was really important. And I think it would do the game a lot of good if it got here a little bit sooner. But I do also think if that was available immediately, it would have devalued like doing like the achievements and everything a lot, right? Because like even now there's already a lot of people that are saying like, oh, I'm not going to do the achievements. I'm just going to wait until the Legendary Relic is out. But if you want to take advantage of it right away, you do have to do the achievements. You do have to do oversouls for it. You do have to like farm the new maps to get like the Stardust currency to get the item. And I don't know, I feel like that's kind of like the point, right? Is like if there was a way to instantly get it, everybody would go for that, and then they would not do it.
Well, the Legendary Relic doesn't need to be instant to get. Like, it can still be an adventure that you go on. I don't know. I'd rather do that one adventure and then have all the relics, even if it took me like a week or two to do the Legendary Relic, than to have to do all the achievements to get the relics now that I need for my raid builds, and then have to do the Legendary Relic quest when that comes out again. Like, I'm just, I guess I'm just engaging. They're forcing me to play the game.
Well, I mean,
more,
you could just have like, I mean, unless I just kind of like zoned out and missed something. Like, why not just have like the Legendary Relic collection require you to get all of the relics?
I mean, we don't know that, right? Like, if it did that, that'd be great.
Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
I'm assuming that's probably not the case.
Wait, does that suck?
Right?
I think that's kind of good.
Sucks, man. What's the point? Like,
well, because
like all it is, like, I don't know. No, it should function like every other legendary item in the game. Yeah. When I got legendary runes, I didn't need to like go around and buy a single copy of every rune.
Well, I kind of like that each relic had right now each relic has a little collection attached to it, or a lot of them do, right?
Yeah, that's fine for people that don't want legendary relic. They can have fun with that.
Yeah, I mean,
they can go replay the story. I don't want to replay the story. Yeah. I'm doing it begrudgingly because I need my fractal rune to actually play the game at the level I want to play it.
Maybe I'm old school in this. I actually kind of like the idea of having to go through like a RP collection to unlock something like a relic.
Maybe that's just an entire World v World reward track to unlock one relic.
Oh, this is actually like a totally different thing, actually. Or I guess like a slight derail almost. But have you seen how fast PvP and World vs. World reward tracks are right now? It's actually insane. Because they took they got rid of PvP potions and World vs. World potions from dailies because they don't want you doing what I do all the time, right? Which is like save up loads of potions and drop them on the launch of an X-Pack. But they put it into the actual reward tracks themselves and in the World vs. World pip system. So right now, you can blast a World vs. World reward track in like 2 hours. Seriously. Like, it's actually insane. It is so strong.
That would have been nice to know when I was
it is so good.
Yes. Where are the things that give you that?
Like the little in the pip chest, the little potions that they have. It's got like the extra reward track. Yeah, they just juice those hard. It's actually so strong they might nerf it.
Logging in right now.
Seriously,
I got some relics to unlock.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of it because I think it's always cool to add better rewards to game modes like World vs. World and PvP. And by the way, it is by far the easiest places to get the new relics. If you want to get like infinite relics for all your characters, PvP and World vs. not even a question, especially World vs. World, unquestionably is the most efficient way to do that. It's not even close. Seriously, you need 50 Jade Heroics things and 100 Badges of Honor. It is nothing. It's literally nothing to pick these things up there. So really, really cool there. I don't know. I just kind of derailed there. We were talking about that. I just had to let everyone know. PSA.
Imagine playing World vs. World. World vs. World is for chumps.
SMH.
Ooh. Yeah, that's right.
Dark Emmy rises.
I gotta get my light sword.
Yeah, I dare you to come to the top of the obsidian jumping puzzle and say that to my face. See how you go. If you want stream content, come to the Obsidian Sanctum jumping puzzle. It's popping. There's a lot of fun happening there.
Incredible.
I'd encourage it.
Snebby time.
Yeah, I'm memeing in case it wasn't obvious. I was kidding. Please don't ban me.
Yeah, I just want to
He was not joking. It was
recent. Emmy
entirely
was not
serious.
joking. Emmy was not joking in the same way that she wasn't joking when she told people in a raid group that they are better off dead, okay, than alive.
No,
That's
no,
actually.
I said they're more useful dead
You-
than alive.
Whoa!
Please get it
Ooh.
right. Thank you very much.
You got to be careful, Emmy, because one time within the last couple of weeks, I was talking to somebody, and Teapot was there, and they were like, I heard that Sneb was like this horrible person, and just like listed all of these things that I had supposedly done or whatever, and I just was sitting there at my computer like how do I even explain this? Like, what do I do? I'm like helpless here. because then they feed it, right? Like the other people, they're like, oh yeah, Sneb like stole my child and sold it on the black market, right? Like, they like push it further and further. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
You got to be careful though.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Let me just like maybe clarify that actually, just so people know the context of that quote. So the more of a derail, but basically, the context that you're doing River of Souls, right? And we only had one healer kind of running up ahead because that's how most people cheese it now. So what I was telling people is that whenever that happens, you just need a couple of people to slash GG because then the healing is more tightly concentrated on a few people alive, right? Because you don't need that many people alive to kill the enforcers. So it's like, in that case, you are literally more useful dead than alive because if you're alive, the one single healer, their healing cannot cover 7 people. But like, if you only have 3 people to heal, then the healing is a lot more concentrated because most healing is only 5 target. Anyways, yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Relic's pretty good if you ask me. I think that there's some potential there. I was maybe expecting a little bit more, but not bad, I would say.
And hey,
like
we're getting more in the next.
We are
in like 3 months.
Yeah.
Months, we're getting more.
Yes, more relics incoming, and because they're the expansion ones, I think they're going to go a bit harder, right? They'll be a little bit funky, a little bit wacky, which there's definitely some interesting stuff that can happen. I think.
I want to throw out an idea here, and it's not fully fleshed out, so bear with me. But I'm having a hard time articulating this. Like my wife, who doesn't really play a lot of video games, she asked me, how's the expansion? Because she knew I was really excited about it and whatever. And I just was like, there's nothing like crazy for me to say. You know what I mean? Like when we had End of Dragons, I could be like, oh yeah, Dragon's End, it's like crazy. Like so many people are trying to figure this thing out right now, and there's commanders. It was like this big deal, right? But and I could be just some kind of anomaly. I will respect that. But I just like it's good, right? The story is good. I think it's really a spectacle in the last meta. I think lots of the achievements are good. But there's just this something missing to me. And I don't know what it is exactly, but it feels like there's not a huge narrative around any kind of one thing or like, oh, this is like so incredible. It's mostly like, hey, everybody, we really hate the vault. Like the vault is good, but you got to fix these. It's just like a list of complaints that I'm seeing a lot on the forums and Reddit and stuff. And then people will be like, yeah, the story is really good. I don't know. Does that make any sense at all?
I think the narrative is that the story is really good and people are excited for the future of the story, which is something that I feel like we haven't had much of before. And but if you're not into story, then I guess it doesn't matter much to you. But that's like exciting enough for me. I guess the thing is, this is a lot less than we usually get for an expansion. So it's just there is some growing pains there,
I also
and
think
it's going to take a while to adjust to like this amount of content from an expansion launch. There's a lot less opportunities for those massive talking points, I suppose. But for me, like the story was enough that like I've been having some really interesting like story discussions with people. I really want to dive in and like learn more about like some of these characters and some deeper lore things that I just haven't really touched on in the past. But that's like the main driver for me at the moment is I'm really invested in the story now, which is something I didn't care too much about before. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like there's a lead up to it, right? Is like even in End of Dragons, right? Is like the first couple of maps, like their metas were pretty easy, pretty straightforward. not too much organization required. People kind of did their own thing. And then as like the maps went on and like the stakes became higher, both in the story and in the open world, like kind of the events also mirrored that sense of scale, right? So I would expect that since these are only the first 2 maps, like, yeah, the metas might be a little bit more on the simple side. You're not really engaging that much with the combat system. But as they add more maps to the collection of maps in the overall expansion, I feel like I guess the tension would rise, right? Like the stakes would become higher, the metas might become higher, that sort of thing. Like the example I always use is kind of like the EOD strike missions, right? Is like the first 2 were very easy. You didn't really need to work that hard on them. And then there was a pretty big spike up with Kaineng, and then an even bigger spike with Harvest Temple. And then they kind of did that again with like adding the CMs, where it's like each CM was a pretty big spike up from the normal mode, and then it kind of culminated into this big pinnacle content with Harvest Temple challenge mode. So I'm personally holding out on that. Obviously, it requires a lot of patience because we're not going to be getting even the CMs for SOTO for at least another 6 months. But my
Oh,
expectation,
3 months, I think. I think 3 months is
yeah,
the
I guess
first
it's
one.
3 months for the first one, 6 months
Mm.
for the second one. So there's definitely like a wait involved. But I would expect that as more content gets released, there's gonna be more and more difficult like reach content to get to.
Like to your point, Sneb, like my missus also asked me, she was like, what did you think of the expansion? And I was like, I'm actually pleasantly surprised. And I kind of just like went on this rant, this like 30-minute babble about the story and how cool it was, and how like in the next update we're going to be going to the demon realm to try and turn like the demon army against the king, and we're alongside like the demon princess or whatever. I'm excited for that, and I think that's going to be like hopefully an awesome meta event against Epark or whatever his name is. I'm keen for that. I'm excited for the future of it, which I haven't felt like this. Like at the end of Dragons, I thought End of Dragons as a whole was good, but I was not excited for anything else, like anything coming after that, and I had like zero expectations. I had no idea what was coming after End of Dragons. I was not super excited for the future. I kind of thought like, this is it. Maybe this is like the best jumping out point for Guild Wars 2, because we end on a high. But like, because I genuinely had no idea what was coming afterwards. But with this expansion, there's so much to look forward to in the future that I'm like really happy and keen to stick around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, like I again don't hate it. I just feel really confused about it. It was when she asked me that, I was like, well, I really enjoyed the story, like more so than probably any of the other stories. I also think the maps are very unique. They obviously took a big risk, and I think in some ways it paid off, and there are other things that I think maybe they can learn from. But yeah, I have no huge complaint or anything. I just can't help but feel like there's something missing. And maybe it's because I'm more of a gameplay focused player than a story focused player. And so
yeah.
I
was just gonna say, like, I really think that this is gonna be a big adaptation point for us as the community, because I think we're very used to X-Pack drops, mega hype, crazy, then falls off into nothingness and it's dead for 3 years. There's another expansion, right? Oh my god, it's crazy, right? But that's not how it is anymore, right? Now it's going to be like a straight line, almost. It's going to be, right, X-Pack drops, then there's another bit of it, then there's another bit, then there's another X-Pack after that. Like, there's no downtime, right? So instead of having these like massive spikes, we're going to have these consistent, this like more of like a straight line instead that just continuously goes. And I think it's going to take an entire full cycle. This thing that Doroya mentioned, I think he's really right about this, where it's weird now because we haven't got some of the things that we're expecting, but the actual gap between all of these big things is going to be a lot smaller. Like, for example, we're getting a Strike CM in 3 months' time, then another after that. And then there's going to be a Fractal after that. But think about it. Then it's going to be another 3 months after that Fractal. Then there's an expansion. And then after that, there'll probably be another Strike CM. So the actual gap between these events is way smaller now, right? It's now that we have a slightly bigger gap now because we're kind of moving into this new system. And it kind of needs a full cycle for it to really happen. So you're right that there is something missing. But I think that's a feature, not a bug, of the new paradigm shift that ArenaNet has gone into here. how they're going to actually release this content. It's entirely possible that some of these patches, yeah, they will be incomplete by perhaps some of the ways that we would think about old Guild Wars 2 stuff. But now it's more of like a continuous thing rather than like these big spike points that we've had previously. So I think that's where that comes from. But I think that will probably pass when we actually see like a full cycle of this, because that's when the consistency will really start to kick in. Does that make any sense? Am I just talking nonsense there, or does that make some sense?
Well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but to go back to what I said about the rifts earlier, they can't release half a thing and say that the follow-up patches are going to fix it. It has to stand on its own. It might not be the final finished product, but what they release has to stand on its own. And Rifts fell short of that. Wizards Vault, you know, it did it. It stands on its own.
And I think the story as well stands on its own.
Yeah.
I was worried that the story was going to be like really like half a story, and that we weren't going to get kind of the end of it until, you know, the final patch or whatever. But this felt really well rounded. Like it left on a good conclusion. It wasn't like too much of a cliffhanger that you just blue balled for the next like 3 months. You know, I think it was. Yeah, I think that was pretty well rounded.
I will say, one thing that has me kind of like bummed about the way is that we know that the 2 strike missions we're getting for this entire X pack are Dagda and Karis, but they've already hinted. Well, they're not just hinted. The Eparch is the big bad, and probably this demon chick Patha is going to backstab us at some point, and we're going to have to fight her. Like, I think that's pretty much something everyone gets or assumes is going to happen, and we're not going to get strikes out of those. So if they do introduce like an Eparch fight or whatever, and he's like amazingly badass, but we're not going to get a strike out of it. Oh, that sucks. Like,
I mean, I guess it'll just be like a big meta event or something. But yeah, I mean, ArenaNet and not making their final bosses a strike, name a more iconic duo. That's
yeah.
We've only had it once with End of Dragons. So
yeah, and I think the other thing that definitely sucks is that the meta events were not very gameplay focused from Sneb's perspective, I'd say. Right? I think that is for me, that is actually the most disappointing thing for me.
I thought the first one is slightly better than the second one.
It's better than the second one, but they're both garbage. I hate to say it, and I don't like saying that. It gives me no pleasure to say that. The meta events are omega disappointing, right? They are all style and no substance. They look kind of cool. You know, I like the weird therapy session exorcism that we do on the dwarf in the first map, right? There's a million tentacles going on in the second one. Yeah, you know what? That's good. You know, it's a cool idea. I like it. But I do not like the final meta event essentially being the Zaitan fight from the personal story. And by the way, that is not an exaggeration, okay? That is literally what happens. For large sections of that event, you are on your sky scale pressing 2, which I believe is actually the same key that you use for the Zaitan attack. It is not good. You know, it is not good. The theme is actually great. You know, some people might criticize like the weird like yoga RP at the end of the second meta event. That stuff, honestly, I kind of love it. It's just so unhinged. Yeah. We do like a little weird dance to combine 6 golems into a giant golem. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty good. I think
it would have been so much cooler if you had to do like defense stuff, right? It's like you had some people in the circles, but then there were like mobs like swarming you, and then like some people had to like fight off the mobs while other people were doing the yoga. I think that would have been so much cooler than all of the mobs kind of dying because of the fire ring outside of it.
I mean, I think it could have been a bit more like, you know, they could have gone some like Dance Dance Revolution stuff. What if you had to like do moves to like dodge while there's like stuff firing at you, right? That'd be kind of funny, no? Like, I think something like that could be really interesting, I think. But it's just like, oh, well, you know, I guess I'll press my button, they'll go on the sky scale and fire at these eyeballs.
I think they needed options. Like, is there anything you can do? Like, if you're not going down on the sky scale shooting the tentacles, are you doing anything? Like, what are you doing at that point?
I think so.
Yeah,
you
I just
die because you fly into the light to get an achievement.
You don't know where to go, so you've
nice. I like it. I like it.
I had no idea where to go when the tentacles were spawning.
And the boss
so I was
does
just like
nothing.
sitting up there.
The boss
Yeah, the boss
literally
isn't
does
doing
nothing.
anything. That's the thing,
He
is
just
I feel
chomps
like-
onto the platform and does nothing. That is
Yeah.
so disappointing because it's such a cool model as well. It's like this
Yeah.
giant horrific thing just that comes out of the abyss. It's like what, and it does nothing. And I'm pretty sad
Yeah.
about that. And that to me is what was the big thing that was missing from the expansion. And it definitely, yeah, I'll admit it, it definitely tinted my view on it a little bit to the negative for that reason, because I was really excited. I was really looking forward to the meta events. That was probably what I was most interested in the expansions. And I definitely feel let down by that. Because this almost goes full circle, right? With Sneb talking about the social element. You know, and again, I know not everyone's going to agree with this, but I love that Dragon's End was like this big community effort with everyone coming together to beat it, right? And that was completely absent, I feel like, with this expansion. And by the way, it doesn't even have to be like Dragon's End difficulty. The exact same thing happened with Heart of Thorns, notably with Dragon Stand. So yeah, just to kind of clarify, it can be Dragon Stand as well. And also Chat Garant as well. I remember everyone was like tryharding to beat like Chat Garant for the first time. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like mega hard or anything like that. It just, there has to be some kind of
Teapot.
Oh, whoa! So you're saying I
can go harder
so
at this?
Would you say, let's just for the meme? Would you say I didn't say enough? You think I need to say?
Yeah,
more?
I don't think you said enough. I'm gonna go harder here because I think we have a problem. I'm gonna take us back in time to a moment when there's a prophecy that I had. I said, because they've made Dragon's End easier, the people who enjoy harder content will play it less, thereby actually making it kind of harder. And so what has happened over time is fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people peg up for Dragon's End. And so people will just like show up and they're like, nothing's happening. No one's here. And sometimes they'll get lucky. And again, I'm speaking from a perspective of NA. So this is kind of how NA goes. Sometimes, depending on the time of day and whatever, there'll be somebody in the LFG. Those fill up rather quickly. But then otherwise, there's just a bunch of private communities that are like, bro, meet at the gate. Meet at the gate. And we're going to go in and we're going to make our own instance. We're going to just absolutely destroy the boss. And they basically created private instances. Because what's happened is because it's gotten easier, people are less engaged and they think that they can leech. And so and this doesn't happen all the time or whatever, but it happens enough where people try to avoid it. There are people with multiple accounts that will try to, get in the maps and basically sit up on the little blimp thing and dive down the last 10% and hit the boss once and get the antique summoning stone. I'm a little bit concerned that it's going to be similar. I think they tried to stop that with the second meta by having sort of that participation meter, but and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, it's still pretty new. I don't know how everything works. But the first meta, all I can think is, man, you could take a bunch of alt accounts, put a bunch of turrets on the main platform there, and just sit there and get the rewards every 2 hours, right? Like, I'm very concerned that they've made it almost. There's this balancing act where if it's too easy, then people will abuse it. Like, good players will abuse it and not do anything. But if it's too hard, then you exclude a large portion of the player base. This is why I actually quite like things like Triple Trouble, where it's not that there's like a massive DPS check or anything. It's just you need to have some people take charge and give instruction and go out and do the thing. And the community rallies around that, and there's people that do it literally every day. But I'm concerned that, when I go to the metas right now, I don't see people are doing this, but I don't see a lot of point in yelling, okay, now everyone goes south, now everyone go east. There was one time where I was the tag. I gave no instructions. We just went around in a circle and we did all the events. We went to the top, the thing died, and we did no instructions. I had no idea what I was doing. In fact, I was the tag and I had no idea where the tentacles were. So I was flying around in circles in the air and we still beat it. Which is fine, I guess. But my concern is, again, eventually, if it's that easy, then people will like abuse it, or it won't feel very engaging. People get tired of it. I wish there was a reason to talk to people. It doesn't have to mean that it's very difficult. I'm not saying that everyone has to have infusions on their gear. In fact, I don't think that would be a good thing for open world, especially. But I just want a reason to talk to people. I want a reason to be like, hey, everybody, I'm tagged up. Like, this is how we're going to do it. You're going to go east. You're going to go west. well, we'll do it. And some people are kind of doing that, but I don't actually think it's necessary. Am I way off base there?
No,
I think
it's okay to want that.
I think you're right that these metas don't need that much organization, but like I don't know, I guess it's like you don't necessarily need to talk about the meta for it to be a social experience, right?
Luckily, you also
Like,
don't need to do
Well,
them. So
yeah,
there's
there's
that.
two kinds of social experiences, right? There's the social experience where you're kind of like AFK in Discord with your friends, and you're just chilling and like talking about, you know, the hockey game the night before, and you know you're pressing one a bunch of times, and you stand in a circle and you get the rewards and you move on. You're still talking about the hockey game. And then there's the social experience of like, all right, we're all engaged in this experience together. I
rallying
need you to
together.
participate. I need you to participate. Like, we're going to do this thing together. We're going to work together. It doesn't have to be super sweaty, but there's just this like level of we're social in the game. Like, we're social about the game. And I think that's the social experience I'm talking about. And maybe that is confusing when you talk about it. I think you can have that other social experience in lots of places and in everywhere in an MMO. But there's very few times when you get to have that social gameplay experience.
Yeah.
In a way that's not like super demanding in an instance piece of content, but that still engages you in some way, like Triple Trouble.
Yeah. I think it's missing, but I don't know. I guess maybe it's just maybe I was just copium or something. But like I imagine they will have a meta like that, right? Like maybe it's not one of the first ones that were released with like the first two maps. That was again with the expansion that was it had a couple goals and it set out to reach them. I feel like that kind of social experience where you're fighting this like really big boss and everybody's rallying together and it really feels like you're part of something bigger. I feel like that's always the best when it's like at the end, right? When it's like at the story culmination. It's kind of like what Bloom was saying. It's like if we do end up fighting Epark and he ends up spoiler by the way. If we do end up fighting Epark and he's like the final boss in like a meta, I could see a really good opportunity where there is that social experience. But I might kind of go the other way. I'm kind of I don't want it to be like that every single time, right?
Oh, I
Because like
agree. It
otherwise,
shouldn't be.
yeah, it's just exhausting to always have to like if you want to work even for a little bit in the expansion, you have to do it all the time. But
Yeah, it would be super demanding. You don't want that. I think it's nice to have one meta that's like that, and then the others can be sort of more chill and whatever.
yeah,
I think the problem is we've only got 2 maps, so if one meta was that, it'd be half the metas in the
True.
entire expansion.
Mm.
And especially when this is, I guess, like a new player focused expansion, all new players want probably to get them hooked on the game is spectacle. Like for a lot of people, just seeing Shadow Behemoth in like Queensdale is enough to get them kind of interested in the game. So I think just pure spectacle was kind of enough for what they set out to do. But yeah, I'm hoping we get like more of a insane, intense meta event in the future in the next map.
And in some sense, to kind of go back to the change in the format, that almost makes sense, right? Because the expansion is building, and we are continuing that storyline. And again, it would make sense, right? If the earlier metas were easier in a new player expansion, then there's maybe a bit more coordination, a bit more challenge later down the line. In the next map as well, there's I could see that. Maybe I'll join the Emmy copium, Emmy cope train here. I think that maybe they'd go a little bit further with that one, right? Because this is something that you've got to think about. For the first time ever, there's almost like more exciting stuff coming after the expansion than with it, right? Which is quite an unusual experience for Guild Wars 2. I think most notably the patch in 6 months' time is insane. We have a brand new weapon for every profession. We have the second strike mission CM. We have Legendary Armor Part 1, Legendary Relic Part 1. The Legendary Relic is being dropped as well. That's actually an insane amount of content that is just going to drop out of nowhere.
In February.
Yeah. It almost is like more than the initial expansion. The meta event will be developed too. I think it won't be the final culmination of the next map. I think that will be the final patch of the expansion alongside the fractal that's happening there. But yeah, a lot of these patches in some way are going to be more impactful than the initial expansion. Which and again, this is what I was trying to perhaps slightly clumsily point to. with my previous kind of diatribe about this, this is a bit of a mindset shift that we as the community perhaps need to have about how the expansion is actually going to look. And almost, I think the slight air of confusion that, that we've had trying to address how the expansion is, because it's almost hard to judge it, knowing that there's so much that just isn't actually in the game yet. It's you have to account for that in some sense. And that's something that we need to think about as players, as content creators, as members of the community, that, yeah, there's going to be some really big stuff later that could potentially address a lot of the issues. I do think Nike is right, though, is that you've got to have that initial launch stand on its own 2 feet, right? You don't want to have to go, well, it kind of sucks now, but in 3 months it won't. Yeah, that's not good enough, right? And that's definitely some criticism that could be leveled at Secrets of the Obscure. I think probably needed a little bit more of the stuff happening later to be happening now, especially when it comes to like those big chase items and perhaps some of the more challenging stuff for players who are kind of looking for that type of experience.
Speaking of chase content, I was going to say, what do you guys think the CMs are going to be for the strike? Don't
even want to speculate. I don't want to get my hopes up. So I'm just going to accept whatever comes and enjoy it for what it is.
I'm not totally sure.
I have one that I really want to see.
Go.
You know how on, I guess spoiler alert, for the Sarah strike mission, how you have to pick and choose which ones that you want to kill?
Yeah.
I want there to be a title where you have to intentionally leave all 6.
Oh, yeah. That will almost certainly be the title, I think. Will be beat the CM with all moves empowered or something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's one particular thing that I think is actually going to be incredibly exciting, because it will be something we've never seen in Guild Wars 2 before. This is really hard to notice on the second boss, because the mechanics are a total joke on normal mode for all of these. The last 10% of Ceres is actually a DPS heal check. The boss stops doing all mechanics, no mechanics, and just starts pulsing out damage every couple of seconds. I think ArenaNet, hope you're watching, I really want to see them go hard on that. I want this to be like an absolute race to the finish line, massive pressure, massive DPS check. And I think that could be epic. That could be an epic kind of culmination to I think that type of stuff in a PvE fight is always really cool. Where it's just you have to just go all out, completely go on, and you've got to send everything you've got, struggle to survive. There's like 2 people left at the end, right? And you finish it off. Yeah, there's something that's never really happened in Guild Wars 2 before. Like, that's not a mechanic that we've had. So I think that could be one area of that fight, at least, that I think they'll probably go pretty hard on. I mean, it's really hard to speculate on what they're going to do outside of that, but that to me will probably be the highlight of that fight, I think, actually, because I've always found that and this is even true of HTCM, right? The difficulty in a lot of Guild Wars 2 fights is like weirdly front loaded, if that makes any sense. Like, you have to get over a hill, then it's over, right? On HTCM, if you kill the 2 big boy ads, right, the Obliterator and the Goliath, you win, right? More or less, right? Ish, right? So the difficulty kind of has this big spike, then it actually falls off as you get towards the end of the fight. Whereas I think that in a lot of other MMOs, a lot of the design there is that the longer the fight goes on, the harder it's going to get, right? And there's always this kind of like race for survival and race to the finish line, which I have actually found somewhat absent in a lot of Guild Wars 2 PvE design. So I'd love to see them really go hard on that, actually, especially in that second challenge mode. I'm not expecting the first one to be very hard. I think it's actually, unless they just like pulled loads of mechanics out of it, there's not that much to it. It's hard to make it like super challenging, I think. But I hope they go brutal. I'm really curious what people would think about this. Because, I've recently been playing the Forbidden game, the Voldemort game, and they nerf shit hard, actually, in that game. And I'll admit, there's some downsides there. It really sucks for me that, honestly, by the time I even got into Mythic raiding in WoW, the bosses were already nerfed. Seriously, I hadn't even set foot in the raid. They'd already been nerfed hard, right, by the time I got there, which definitely sucks. But I would love to see them just say, you know what? Ceres week 1 is fucked up, right? It's just, this is not okay, right? Like, this is just not okay. Like, it's too much, right? Like, and then they can nerf it later. Or simply had, like, add an entirely, or simply add the original version as like an insanity moat, right? After they nerf it, after like week 1, right? So for the first week, the only version is this like ludicrous difficulty. They go insane, crazy DPS check, everything just obliterates you. And then a week later, it downgrades. So the challenge mode, you know, it essentially gets a lot easier, but they preserve the original difficulty. Because I even think this is true of something like HTCM, actually. It kind of really sucks as a player who's interested in like kind of competitive play or like hardcore raiding that you didn't kill the original version of it. You know what I mean? Like you killed the nerfed version. And that's like, oh man, I didn't kill the I didn't do it. I played an easier version, right? So I think that preserving that would be pretty cool as well, but I don't know. It is what it is.
I feel like that's just a lot of development work, isn't it? Because then you would need to
Unfortunately,
like some
yes.
other form of like way of toggling that, and then I mean you have to code those encounters and stuff as well. But
Yeah.
And you've got like just 2 versions of a fight that are essentially identical, except just some things are tuned differently. You know,
Yeah.
weird.
I mean, it would be weird, but I mean, I imagine that would be at least in the same universe as possible when it comes to development resources. Because if all it does is it just tunes things really aggressively in terms of, say, the enrage timer or the health and, you know, the damage and that kind of stuff, wouldn't be too bad, I want to say. But yeah, you know, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'll admit this. Disclaimer: what I just said is some pretty serious cope. All right,
I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. I think if anything, it's just something I want it to be attainable for players that aren't playing at like a really, really high level. But at the same time, I want it to be really hard for people that really do enjoy that kind of chase content. And I feel like historically the way they've always done that is that you have the regular CM and then the CM where you have to intentionally fail some sort of mechanic to give yourself a handicap. So honestly, as long as they have a sufficient CM, I'm going to be happy. And then I will probably be training the CM version on repeat whenever it comes out. So
yeah, it's a bit tricky to find that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know from my experience with the Skane gang, HTCM, bit of a hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think I just had 2 HTCM teams dissolve because they have gone for months and haven't made enough progress.
Yeah, I think the CM solution is good. I was gonna say. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the real issue is there are hard requirements for the really, really challenging content, and most people aren't willing to just straight up tell someone that they're not meeting the requirement and or have consequences if they
social. Wait, when
refuse
you
to
say
improve
social
or whatever, right?
consequences, like so.
Well, the reality is that you should be as kind to people as possible here. But if you have somebody that they just can't meet the benchmark and it's holding the team back, if this goes on for more than a month, then eventually everyone's going to be like, we just don't want to do this anymore. So it's better to say, hey, you need to go work on this. We're going to put you on the bench for now and then come back when you're ready. Then just have yourself just keep slamming your face against the wall. It just doesn't make sense to do that. But it's a really difficult conversation to have with people. I mean, it's a recreational activity. You're doing this for fun. Nobody likes to be told they're like not good enough for something, right? So you have to be very gentle with how you approach this feedback, but nobody wants to give that feedback, so it just doesn't happen. So people would rather dissolve the team than give the feedback is what I've experienced, at least.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of that can be fixed if there was just more content that could fit those people. Like I've actually kind of run into something of similar issues because I've been running a lot of trials because I'm about to put together another HCCM prog group. And what I think has helped a lot of people, I mean, what I hopefully will help ease the pain for a lot of people is that I did the trials using the previous EOD CM. So even if they don't make the final group for the HCCM, at least they got the titles for the previous 3. And I feel like Gildersleeve kind of suffers from that because there's only a handful of prestigious titles, and those titles you have to be playing at a very high level. There's not really anything in that like mid tier that you can get.
There's no prog culture is another way to put
exactly.
it. There's like zero prog culture.
Mhm.
In fact, it's gotten so bad that I have eliminated training from my Discord because I'm actively trying to get people to not rely on other more experienced players to guide them through. I think it's a really positive thing that players do that. And I think it's really a positive thing when people are more experienced and they go in and help people prog or give them tips and advice. But we've actually come to this point where we basically tell people that the only way that they can play the content is if they do a training. And that means that you must wait for someone to do the training. And that makes no sense. Why wouldn't you just run in with 9 other people who have similar goals and fail a bunch of times to learn it? But there's some kind of, I don't know exactly how to express this, but there's some kind of taboo about failing in this content. And so people don't like the prog culture. They don't do it. Maybe it's a lack of transparency tools. Maybe it's hard to tell what's going wrong, so it's harder to prog. I don't know exactly the reason, but all I know is it needs to change. Otherwise, that middle scene will always suffer. You will always have a massive divide between people who are just fresh into the content and people who have done it for like 5 years.
I think it's just like it's just the time commitment of getting 9 other people to play every single week at the same time. Like, I haven't done any prog in a very long time. I think I did it back when Heart of Thorns came out and the Heart of Thorns expansions. Haven't done it since. But we just don't have any systems in game. Like, say, Final Fantasy has like a really big prog culture because the in-game tools allow it. Like, you can just like go into the LFG and it's got specific like UI elements for progression groups and like to indicate where you've gotten up to in the fight, and you've got to meet that requirement to join them, and everyone has this same expectation. Like, I would love to do progression of Harvest Temple with randoms, but I don't want to commit like 60 hours or whatever and group up with the same 9 people every single week at the same time. I kind of just want to like jump in on a Thursday night and see how far I get again with like a fresh group, but I can't really do that in Guild Wars 2. The systems just don't really allow it.
I kind of think that one of the biggest issues here is one that's really hard to solve. Is actually the nature of progression in Guild Wars 2 compared to the nature of progression in other MMOs. This is actually true in other MMOs. They solve it with difficulty settings. Guild Wars 2 doesn't have that luxury. 99% of progression in Guild Wars 2 is learning how to play your build. 1% of it is learning how to play the fight. And, weirdly enough, that's kind of true even in HTCM to a lesser degree. But the number one thing, because I've been in there, I've waded through the seas of HTCM progression with a couple of groups now. And the number one thing is, it's like, hey, you got to be able to hit that dodge button. Hey, you got to use your stability right now. Hey, you got to do that rotation. You're like way off on your damage. Why? You got to get better. And this is why I think progression culture dies in Guild Wars 2. Because when you go, okay, progression group, right? You're going to get such a crazy variety of players who are in completely different places when it comes to like how good they are at actually piloting the game. And that's where you run into issues. Because learning the fight is not going to be good enough in those situations. You can know every single mechanic, but if you can't press buttons well enough, you have no hope of making it. It's just not going to happen. And I think that this is ultimately where it breaks down. Like, and part of that is no difficulty settings. Part of that is the open world is very, very easy. So you don't really know if you're pressing your buttons very well. It's like really hard to tell, I think. Obviously, like lack of DPS meter, where the website doesn't look like it's going to give you a virus, doesn't exactly help either. Like no gear inspect definitely doesn't help, right? Like a lot of these systems, right, like definitely don't help, because it means you don't know if you've got good items or not, like, or like how your items compare to someone else, or how your build compares to someone else. Like that, that type of like analytic is really tricky, and all of these like feed into each other, right? Like players struggle to know how well they're piloting their build because it's very hard to compare yourself to other people without, again, like using a third-party tool. And that sucks, right, for anyone who wants to kind of get on the growth train. And then you have all these players getting funneled into these groups, and essentially you end up with 10 players who are in totally different places. So what ends up happening is that the players who are more experienced when it comes to piloting their build, they just have to wait until the other players kind of catch up when it comes in terms of button pressing, and that means it's like, oh yeah, I mean your group dissolves, right? Like you immediately quit, because it, having to like wait that length of time for people to catch up with you, it can end up being a pretty frustrating experience, right? Like the amount of time where you have to wait until that one guy just isn't going to feed in Guild Wars 2, it's a pretty long time sometimes because of just the nature of the way progression works. Guild Wars 2 is not that focused on learning the encounter. This is especially true in raids, by the way. And funnily enough, I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of raid players specifically like raids and not strikes, because ArenaNet have tried to invert this. I actually think strike missions are an attempt to make progression culture more of a thing. They are way more like this than raids. Raids are if you press buttons, they fall over in seconds, and there's no challenge whatsoever. Strike missions are a lot more, you need to understand how it works. And if you understand how it works, you will win. That's how I describe a lot of the strike missions. Even if it will take you ages, you will get there in the end if you know how it works. And I kind of think that raids coming before strike missions kind of set this up. And fractals are like this too, actually. Fractals are very much like mechanically driven. If you press buttons well, fractals literally do nothing. You know how the fractal boss does nothing? I don't know if they fixed that yet, but like Eye Keeper of the Peak just AFKs for the first 66% or 33% rather. That's how all fractals are if you know how to press buttons, pretty much. And that's how a lot of raids are if you know how to press buttons. So, I don't know, that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, I think that's true for the wing 1 through 4. I do think 5 through 7 is much more mechanically intensive. It's like if you fail like the kiting and like the pillars and stuff, you're not gonna be able to clear it. But I do agree for the most part, which is actually something that I actually like a lot, because what I refer to it is like there's DPS checks and mechanics checks. Right? It's like in a lot of like the early fights, there's just a lot of DPS checks. Like if you kill the boss faster than it can kill you, then you just win. But like in a lot of the more recently designed encounters, it's much more of a mechanics check. Like I actually ran into this situation. I'm gonna roast them right now. So I have a group of friends. They're actually the ones who taught me how to like do raids and everything, like way back in the day. They're returning back to the game right now. And I'm talking, these guys like hold the records for fractals. We got into OLCCM and they were doing ultra high damage, and we wiped sub 10%, like after like everything was done, twice. And it's just very much like it demonstrates. It's like, yeah, in that case, like you can have really high damage, but you're still gonna fail if you don't handle the mechanics or if you just like ignore the mechanics. And it's actually, I guess, kind of like segueing this into like, I don't know if you guys want to go into this topic, but like power creep and stuff. I find power creep to not really be a problem if the encounters are more mechanically based instead of DPS based. It's like you can have the highest amount of damage in the world, but unless you're doing like 1 million damage per second, you're not going to clear HTCM unless you pass all of the mechanics. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. HTCM is like a good hybrid, right? It's like a pretty good hybrid of the two. I think that's why a lot of players enjoy it for that reason, because there's a lot of like button pressing going on, but you've also got to do the mechanics. You could argue it's a little bit low on the mechanics, right? Because it comes down to like, hey, you got to stand in the green circles, buddy. That's what you got to do. If you better do it.
Yeah.
Watch out for the claw attack. That's like, yeah, KOCM is probably the
KOCM is really cool.
It's pretty mechanical, yeah. There's kind of a lot going on there. Like, I think there's a fair bit going on with Old Lion's Court as well. I think there's some pretty exciting. There's some pretty exciting ways that you can approach that fight, I think. And like how you can solve it ends up being pretty good. But yeah.
Yo. There's a comment that I want to address. Can I address it quickly?
Oh boy. Oh wait. Okay, do it.
It's actually not a bad one.
Okay.
Yeah, it just somebody said that getting into training raids is hard. And you are right. And that's the problem. The problem, I'm also trying to save face here because I know I'm going to get obliterated for what I said earlier. It's going to be taken completely out of context. So I have to explain more. The reason I'm trying to get rid of training in my Discord is that I don't have enough trainers. Nobody wants to do it. So there's 1 million requests to do training and they don't get fulfilled because there's just not enough people to and at the right times, and people are trying to, they're like, will you at 4:30 in the morning on a Tuesday please help me learn how to do OLCCM in particular? It's not realistic. Like, it just can't happen. There's just not enough people. And so the focus is, you shouldn't be focusing on, can I get into a training? You should be focusing on, can I find 9 other people to play with? There's just a slight change there, right? One is, I need to find a very particular kind of person who is willing to lead me through and teach me everything about the encounter for free. And then find a bunch of other people who want to like experience that. I actually would wager that there is an extreme amount of people who just want to play. Like I think Bloom is quite like this. Bloom just wants to play, just wants to blast, right?
Want to play. I don't want to be led. I just want to be able to jump in with some randos and smash my head against the wall with them for like 3 hours.
I really
fun. That's part of the experience.
I love it.
I really want to underline this because I think it's really easy to have this perspective when you're in the Guild Wars 2 sphere. No other game operates like this. There is no other MMO where it's considered that if you're going to get into group content, someone must be there who's done it before and who will teach you everything. There is no other MMO that works like this. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because that mentality is unsustainable. Like any game that has an instance content scene that it works like that, I'll say it. It's DOA. You cannot do that. Because there's always going to be way too many people who need that service and nowhere near enough people who are going to be able to provide that service. And it's like huge churn, huge burnout. It is not sustainable. So I really want to kind of explain this. No other game is like this. Every single other MMO, you can get into progression groups for even content that is far harder than the stuff in Guild Wars 2, by the way, right? Way harder. Than this stuff. Like hell, like you in 14, like you could even do this for ultimates, is my understanding, right? That you can actually essentially find prog groups like for absolutely disgustingly brutal content, right, in this games. So again,
like
it's
can
not
do it in game as well.
Yeah,
it's not like
in game. Yeah, you can do it in game. Like it's not the difficulty of Guild Wars 2 content that kind of mandates training. No. Other MMOs, you have progression culture for far harder content than Guild Wars 2 raids.
Yo, I'm gonna add to something you said there because I think this is really important people understand. The fact that we tell people that they need to do training makes people believe that it is far harder than it actually is. Far harder. The number of times I bring people into raids and go, all right, tell me what you think. What's it going to be out of 10? What's the difficulty level? They all say 9 or 10. We go whip through Wing 1 in half an hour. And I'm like, all right, what do you think? And they go, oh, it's like a 4? It's way different, right? But if we go and tell everyone, okay, well, in order to get into this really, really hard content, you have to get somebody who's already done it before to tell you everything. And then... And only after you've done that can you really repeatedly do the content, because otherwise you're just not capable of doing it. It's impossible. That's just so demeaning to people, isn't it? Like I think that people have way more potential and capability than we give them credit for, and it seems kind of silly to insinuate that they're unable to do something unless they have a trainer. Don't get me wrong, though. It is a major advantage to have an experienced player in your group, especially one who's willing to give you some tips and tricks. But that's very different than saying that the content necessitates
it necessitates it. Like
it's very different. None of the content in Guild Wars 2 necessitates that you have somebody who's already done it teach it to you. Some of it will be harder without experience, as we saw with Really Reed doing the week-long HTCM stuff. They got really, really far.
It was epic.
Yeah, it was super epic content. The point is that most of the content doesn't require that level of commitment or anything. You don't need perfect builds. You don't need any of that. If you do some of that, you'll have an easier time. But I think we need to take a deep breath and relax a little bit. There are people that just want to blast and just want to play with other people. And if we, unfortunately, the systems in the game even sort of instruct you to find somebody to teach you. Like, go in the LFG and look, it's experience and training. Why doesn't it say experience and progression? Why doesn't it say experience and practice? Why doesn't it say experience progression practice or experience progression training? Anything that doesn't just say, all right, you're either never done this before and require somebody to hold your hand through it the whole time, or you know it perfectly. That dichotomy does not make sense because it's just not reality. There are people all along the spectrum of experience here, and it's much better for people to learn by practicing and progressing with people than it is to just go in and have to wait for hours or literally schedule a time where somebody can train you. Having to schedule your time around getting trained on a wing like Wing 1 is, once you've experienced that, you realize that's just kind of silly. Like, if you took 10 people and you're all like, hey, we're gonna go into this, we're gonna figure it out. Let's watch a video. Let's pull up the Hardstuck guide and let's just kind of piece our way through it. It would be way easier than waiting until Saturday when that one person is available at that one particular time to teach you.
Just want to point out that, yeah, I completely agree with this, but I do think it's getting a lot better. I've seen it a lot with the EOD and now the SOTO strike missions. Like if you go to LFG right now with the SOTO strikes, there's a lot of people saying doing this for the first time, all welcome, or progging through a new strike mission. And there's like 5 or 6 groups at any one point, especially during like NA, like I guess what are they called, live hours or whatever it's called, like around reset time. So it's like, I do think it's getting a lot better. And I would also like to
I think that's because of new players, by the way. I think that's because new players.
Yeah, 100%. There's just fresh blood.
Yeah,
There's fresh blood in the community. So yeah. And I also want to point out, I think obviously there's a lot that the game can do for this, but I do also think like, especially content creators, we have a massive influence on this kind of thing. And something that I've personally been trying to do inside of my own community is encourage people to lead what I call YOLO raids. So I personally do this myself every Monday, but I know that there's actually a decent number of people in my group that have started commanding it themselves, which is basically no experience required. You just go in and you just blast groups. Like I do that every Monday. I tell people like, regardless, you can have never done Wingbone before, never geared out a character. We're going to take you through, give you a 10-second crash course with my coffee pasta, which I'm happy to share if anyone wants it. And then we just get as many kills as we can. And again, I feel like I always bring this up, like with commanding, right? It's like you don't have to get everyone to do that, right? It's like if you're one commander and you lead 10 groups, you're touching 100 people, right? And then it's like of those 100 people, if you can even influence 1 or 2 people to do the same thing, they're gonna go out, and then it's just gonna kind of like propagate exponentially from there. So it's like, I don't know. I'm doing my part.
Man. I have a great time because every week, if I want to do a piece of content, I just open it up and I just say, doing this, all welcome. And it's just a full clown fiesta. And I love it. I love it. I love the chaos. It's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll get the
I would
again.
I'm just gonna yell to ArenaNet. I want matchmaking for all of these. I don't care. Just give me matchmaking. Let me just jump in with some randos and we'll try it. You know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think actually I've talked about a matchmaking system for Guilders 2 before, and I remember being told that, of course, it's like it's not going to be possible if you want the exact, I guess, team comp that most people run nowadays, which is like boon healers, hybrid DPS with like exactly quickness or alacrity, and then the rest DPS. Something, I guess, maybe just thought bubble for people to chew on, but I think it could be really interesting if they had a matchmaking system with not those requirements, because technically you can clear, especially wings 1 through 4, you could do it with no boons. It's not going to feel good, but you could definitely do it, right? So
that's
it's like,
what I mean.
It could be really cool if there was some sort of soft matchmaking system where it's like you have 2 healers per group, and then that would be judged based off of how much healing power you have on your build or something. And then you could have like 2 tanks in the group, which are dictated by how much toughness you have, and then 6 DPS, right? And it's like once you're in the group, I don't know. I remember thinking about that before and like bringing it up to my community to see what it might look like. And we were like hypothesizing it could be like, well, then once people are actually in there, then like, you know, you can have some people change like a trait or 2, and then you could like bring specific buffs. Like it might not be 100% uptime, but it could be like 40 or 50%. I don't know, something like that.
I would take it back even further. I just want like basically every week, whatever the emboldened wing is, you can just matchmake into it. No requirements, nothing. If you want to have the perfect group comp, well, I got good news. The LFG system still exists, and you can just create your own group. But if you want to be like me and you just want to jump in and blast the emboldened mode, raid or strike or whatever, I think there should be systems in place for that. Because like the main content that I do every day is actually Dragonstorm, because I can literally I log in at the right time and I just jump into a public instance and I get it done. That's what I want, that experience for, like, you know, strikes and raids as well. I wouldn't mind it, you know.
Yeah, I think you just make the easy mode or the normal mode like easy enough that you can just beat it no matter what. I don't think you even try and.
I don't think strikes do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
They do. Yeah, that's why I like them. This is what I've said. Yeah, like normal mode should be Icebridge Saga 5, right? Like you should be able to basically get 10 random people in there, and you'll probably win. Like my ideal difficulty for match-made content in Guild Wars 2 is Freezy from Winter's Day, because ArenaNet gave stats on this. ArenaNet said that in the public instance, as long as over 5 people, so 6 or more people, make it to the end boss. So maybe some people like leave in the pre-event or whatever. But as long as 6 or more people make it, there was like a 95% chance that they beat it. If you get 6 people in the end boss, that is how it should be. I don't think you should do any kind of role system, because role systems work if everybody kind of knows what's going on. Role systems do not work in Guild Wars 2 if you open it up to the wider player base. Because, again, you know, look, I'm going to just, you know, I'm going to take some heat for Sneb here as well. If you look at the people who join public Freezy, yeah, those are the type of players who are going to be in your public strike missions. Sometimes it will be like 2k DPS. In fact, quite often it will be 2k DPS. So you've got to balance according to that. And there's no point even trying to like fit roles into that. There's just no point. Like, you know, it should be like just get 10 random people in there and just go full send, right? Like that's how it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Usually, like, if me personally, I will always take on like one of the quickness alack roles, maybe like a healing role. That's usually enough. One other person will go the other healer, and we're set. You know, I don't care if we don't have full.
As long as there's a couple of people. As long as a couple of people have a build that kind of makes sense, it will work out. But the key with any matchmaking system is that it's got to work. One of the reasons why nobody used the public strikes, outside of some of the issues around them with like not being able to leave properly for whatever reason, is because they failed.
You can't like wait, like you can't queue in and keep going about your day, and then once the queue pops, you go in and you just blast. You have to sit there.
Yeah, you have to sit there.
Waiting for people.
So you need
which
like
I think
a queue,
is the biggest factor. Yeah, you just need a queue so that you can queue in and just go about doing your events or whatever. And while you're waiting, and then when the queue pops, you're straight in. You can do the fight immediately. You know.
Exactly. It always comes back to this topic. I actually blame Sneb for this, to be honest. I blame Sneb. It's always his fault. Yeah. Where are we even going with this? I even know I know where the direction was.
The difficulty of strikes in Secrets of the Obscure is all right, and we just hope that the challenge modes are pretty good.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, I have actually no idea where. I don't know how we ended up here. I'm lost.
It just kind of, I yammered on. It's my fault. I take all blame. Look, all things lead to raids.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny though. I really don't have really a ton to say about SOTO. Is kind of what the theme has been for me. I'm just like good, kind of like the content's been out there. I think there's a few tweaks. I think ArenaNet knows there's probably going to be a few tweaks. Obviously, there's some balance issues. It's always going to be like that. Like Nike said, I actually think it's kind of part of the fun where you're trying to find the broken crap and see how broken it really is, and then it gets fixed like a week later. That's life. But otherwise, I'm just content. I am at peace with it. I eagerly await the next content in 3 to 6 months.
That's good. I like that attitude.
Yeah.
Have we missed anything about the expansion? Or are we done?
Yeah, I'll say one thing.
Oh, okay.
To give ArenaNet credit, the expansion, the art design and art direction and the maps themselves were so incredibly superior to End of Dragons, it makes End of Dragons look even worse in comparison.
What?
Like,
really?
Like SOTO, the maps look great. They have like incredibly well thought out sort of visual design and and art direction. And especially the first map, I would say, is especially good.
Yeah.
There's lots of NPCs that have chatter that you can listen to and dialogue you can hear to get little lore tidbits. There's like literal lore books everywhere with like a couple paragraphs here and there you can read that make the world feel so much more alive. Whereas in End of Dragons, literally none of that existed. It was completely empty maps, and Saitung was mid as far as that goes. But then the other three they just fell off the cliff in terms of NPCs that just existed for the sake of making the world feel more colorful. They didn't have any of that, and SOTO has completely righted the ship. And My big worry was that End of Dragons was going to be the new standard. I was worried that, budget X-Pack, it's going to be budget X-Packs from now on. And look, this is what the studio is capable of. These are the corners that they're willing to cut. These are the corners they're not willing to cut. And my thought was that POF level of map polish was going to be a thing of the past. And I'm happy to say they brought it back with this X-Pack. And it was just a fact of, it now just makes End of Dragons look like it was a bit of a rush job. And I don't blame them for that being the case. They had to get it out when they did. But yeah, I'm glad that they've raided the ship.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing that I particularly love about this is the sense of scale. I've always felt that Guild Wars 2 has felt quite small. Really, you don't feel like a small character, but everything in SOTO is huge, right? There's massive towers. The buildings are massive. I think some people are gonna hate this, but I love the fact that there's loads of corridors that just have nothing in them, and you could just get lost in them. It just traps you, and it's kind of hard to navigate until you get used to it. Yeah, I think the design is really good on the maps. It was a lot better than I was expecting, but I think it really shows where their goals are with the expansion. They're really committed to the story experience. They're really committed, in my opinion, to the world, the open world experience. They want the open world to be really interesting and look really good and feel very alive with SOTO. And I think they did a very good job with this for sure. That's definitely one of the highlights of the expansion. I like that it looks different. It looks weird. I like the color palette. I like that everything's huge. I like that the wizards are weird. And they're, yeah, I don't know. It's good.
There is one major problem. I think they did it so big and so good that it's maybe not quite optimized, because I was on all lowest settings, best performance, and I got 13 frames a second.
Yeah, there's the second map.
There may be some
rough.
tweaking that needs to be done.
Yeah, it's
especially for some reason, if you look toward the center of the map, it destroys your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the wizards are unhinged. Do you know the premise of the first map? I can't believe nobody's talking about this. The premise of the first map is actually fucked up. The idea is that the wizards have basically created all of these alternate realities. And all of where really bad stuff happens, the Wizard's Tower explodes, or Balthazar won, right? Or the Stone Summit won. And as a result of that, all of the people who live in these little mini worlds, they have miserable lives, right? And they're in constant torment. And the wizards are ooh, wouldn't that be so crazy if we just did this, right? I think it's actually really interesting.
Theory.
Yeah,
okay, I have a crackpot theory.
And again, as you go through the story, the wizards kind of engage in very morally ambiguous behavior, right? Very morally dubious behavior in a lot of different ways, and you learn that they've been doing some pretty questionable stuff, right? Over the course of all of their various experiments and so on. And I think that kind of stuff really gives a lot of texture to the world. It almost makes it a bit more believable, right? It's in a lot of Guild Wars 2 stuff, people are almost comically evil and comically good. Right, if that makes any sense, oh yeah, well, that's the good guy, so they never do anything wrong. Or that's the bad guy, oh, look how evil they are, right? I think this is why, in particular, Icebrood Saga grabbed me a little bit more compared to a lot of the other Guild Wars 2 story, because it was a little bit more ambiguous, with characters like Bangar and Jormag being a lot more interesting and a lot less shallow than the normal Guild Wars 2 writing. But yeah, they really carried it over into this expansion. It's a well-written expansion. It's a well-built world. Yeah, I do like SOTO because of the referral link. Buy the game using my referral link. Not Sneb's. Definitely not Sneb's. Don't do it.
Why is it always not mine?
Yeah, because yours is the worst one. That's why. Yeah.
Buy the game using Emmy's referral link in particular, so that it's not Teapot's.
Oh.
But then consider also clicking mine.
Okay. That's the second consideration, right? I'm all the way at the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah. One final meme, I guess. I think we can kind of wrap up, do some final thoughts here. Do you see that they did a really hilarious meme saying that they basically wish they could have finished the Icebrood Saga? There's a Sylvari you can talk to, and you can ask them about Primordus, and she basically says, "Oh, I really wish I had more time to work on that story," or something like that. I just thought that was quite a funny touch.
Wait, that's true. That's real?
Yeah, it's real. Yes. Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
Jeez.
Is the devs actually talking to us?
It's a cry for help.
Do you think they should have killed Bram? Do you think it was a cop out not killing
Yes,
Bram?
it was a huge
Yes,
cop out not to
100%.
kill Bram. It was
like
a
why?
massive cop
Why is
out.
it
Holy shit.
when Dragonstorm happens, Rylan dies,
Yeah.
but Bram doesn't? Like when both dragons died, the champions should have died too. A complete cop out. No one would. People would be happy that Bram was died. It was a miss.
And he's not even in the new story, so
Yeah.
it would have been like...
They're all
I mean, I guess
gone.
that maybe there's something against killing a pregnant character that they didn't want to do, but maybe there's something against that like that would be like a bit untoward. But they should have done it. They should have pulled the trigger.
Brahamgar
literally.
lore, right? The Brahamgar lore.
Yeah, Bramgar's deeper lore than even Zojigar. There's not an emote yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here's the link to the.
I stress yet.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to see it, by the way, like here's the. There's the link is posted in chat. Here it is. Yeah. The NPC says that is a file I wish I had more time to work on. Tragic, I think. Pick a different dragon.
Oh my gosh, it's 100% a cry for help. I love that. You know, that was approved.
Yeah. They snuck it by NCSoft. They didn't get to see it.
They did.
Yep.
But anyway, I think that about kind of wraps things up for this, first tea time about the expansion. Any final thoughts? I don't know. Do you want to flame the forums or something, Nike? I don't know.
I mean, we've all done that.
I guess we've already done that.
The whole thing is flaming all the bad takes on the forums.
Yeah.
But yeah, the most unhinged people are just the people complaining about dailies and login rewards. Like if you're upset about the dailies and the login rewards, like, oh my god, like
they're so much better. There are
just
huge
people that
upgrades.
I think the one that makes me mad is the people that are actually like upset that they have to play the game.
Yeah.
Or like, I can't believe the game is incentivizing me to play the game. It's like, oh really? Like, what an insanely good criticism. Upvote.
So, yeah, I saw someone who was like, I used to have to log in for like max 15 minutes. Now I have to, do all this stuff on the checklist. And I'm like, man, I want an excuse to play Guild Wars 2 for more than 15 minutes a day. So
well, and they're like, well, it's FOMO. If I don't do it, it's FOMO. It's like, well, one, the rewards aren't leaving ever, so there's no actual FOMO. And if that's your definition of FOMO, every day you don't do daily fractals, you should have FOMO over the 25 gold you didn't get.
Correct. You
why
should have
don't
FOMO
you?
over every meta event farm in the game. Like, why aren't you doing all of them simultaneously?
Yeah.
Every meta event you don't do is you should have FOMO over.
Yeah, because it's all time gated, right? Like it's all time gated, so there's plenty of FOMO. It's just that people conveniently don't look at it. Well, I mean, realistically, because it was stupid to care about that. It doesn't make sense,
yes,
right?
And it's stupid to care about this one, so they suck. Yeah. These people just suck.
Well, I mean, to give
cleansing nuke, get rid of them.
To give a slightly more measured response there, I think it's actually worth noting that you can get, I believe, people crunch the numbers, about 14k acclaim in a 3-month period. That is enough to buy everything like 3 times over. So even if you are a player, you want to get everything, which, by the way, is totally fine. I think that's a perfectly valid goal to want to go for, to unlock all the stuff from the vault. You can chill. Like, you are chilling on getting that done. You certainly don't need to do it every day to unlock everything. Like, not even close, right? So that's a more measured response, shall we say, to the flaming of the people who are concerned about this. So I think that if you really dig into the systems, and look at it, there's no reason to be concerned. Like the vault in particular is, just from a numbers point of view, it is a huge upgrade, especially for players who don't engage in group content, like like the fractals and raids and stuff. It is a massive upgrade for players. Like in terms of the gameplay experience, I think it will be more exciting to do a bunch of like random stuff out in the world, but also in terms of like the actual reward, right? Like the reward is way better than it used to be, like for doing dailies. So yeah, everyone wins, I think, when it comes to the dailies. Yeah. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up. Anyone else want to have some final thoughts on the expansion, Secrets of the Obscure? Want to any hot takes? If not, it's time to sell out. Not for the expansion, but for ourselves.
I think it's a good expansion, and I think it bodes well for the future. I was very pleasantly surprised. I was going into it kind of doomer. Yeah. Kind of like a little skeptical, but I was pleasantly surprised. I think it was pretty decent expansion, so I'm happy.
Yeah, before the expansion launch, there was a comment where someone said that if there was a meta event so hard that Muckluck's community couldn't do it, that they would quit the game. And I countered by saying that I would buy a copy of the game for my alt account. Unfortunately, the meta event wasn't that hard, so it's a lose-lose for me. The person's still in the community, unfortunately, and I don't have a copy for my alt account. So kind of a lose-lose for me on that one.
Okay.
I was hoping that person would be gone, but
Jesus Christ. Well, there you have it.
Cleansing nuke. You gotta, shake off the fleas.
Yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. Okay. Gamers, it's time to wrap it up. Here we go. We've got 5 gamers here on TeaTime this time around. You know what? I think Sneb's gonna go first. He's in the middle. He's the center. He's in the center of the TeaTime. The trees flow around you, as we can clearly see here. What's going on, Sneb? What's going on?
Yo, well, if for some reason you don't want to get the open world legendary armor and you do want to get the raid legendary armor, which takes you less time, will probably cost you less gold, you can join the Skane Gang, which is the guild that I run, the community that helps people unite into teams and tackle and progress through the raid content. Discord.gg/Skane Gang, SKEINGANG, or you can follow me on Twitter, Snebzor, SNEBZOR. Yeah, there's a dot randomly. That's Emmy. Emmy has the dot in her name. But yeah, at Snebzor on Twitch, Twitter, etc. So where you can find me.
Okay. Next up, it's Emmy. Go.
Alright, my name is Emmy. I do a lot of endgame PvE shenanigans, so everything ranging from really casual friendly stuff, so like the YOLO raids I mentioned earlier today, to really, really high-end stuff. So I'm actually going to be leading my 4th Harvest Temple Challenge Mode progression group, most likely in the next week and a half, and I'm expecting us to get this kill probably in a couple of weeks, and if that ends up happening, I will be jumping directly into Group 5, because there's been a lot of interest for it. So I do raid trainings, YOLO raids. I also recently started something called the Guild Wars 2 Help Desk, which basically means like if you need help with anything, whether that's ad infinitum, Envoy 1 or 2, open world, like getting elegy mosaics, that sort of thing, I and the rest of my community will happily gather together just to help you out. So I think ever since I started that about 3 weeks ago, I kid you not, we've gotten like 20 people their ad infinitum like achievements and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. And I also, as you can see, the cat has infiltrated. It's past the time where I usually like play with him and stuff, so he's kind of like begging for attention. So after this, I'll probably go play with him a little bit. But yeah, that's me. You can find me on emmy.exe. So, yeah.
Okay. Next up, Bloom. Came into the expansion as Doom, but has returned to Bloom.
Yes. I am Bloom on YouTube. I do Guild Wars 2 videos sometimes. Haven't in a while, been pretty busy, but hopefully after this launch, I'll make some videos on there. I'm also a reviewer on the Skill Up channel, and hopefully I'll be doing this big Secrets of the Obscure / Guild Wars 2 in 2023 review on there in like the coming weeks, I think. So yeah, that's me.
Very exciting. Okay. And finally, it is Nike. Looking very ominous. You're kind of matching the tone of the expansion. A little darker, little scary.
Sun's going down. We started late.
Yeah, this is a late tea time. This was a late tea time, actually. That's Bloom's fault, though, actually. I'm going to stop letting him get away with this. We've got to just make him get up earlier. Or stay up late. I don't know. Whichever works, I guess. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you can check out my YouTube channel. Some videos on there and about Guild Wars 2. I stream Guild Wars 2 raids with my raid group on Fridays, and I do Zwift streams on Tuesday, Thursdays. If you are looking to, get some motivation to work out and, be part of the fitness sort of community, you should drop by and spend some time. We go hard, and it's pretty fun. Check it out.
Okay. Be sure to check out all those gamers. Of course, links will be everywhere. They'll be on the stream. They'll be not in the chat because the chat is full of trees right now. The Covenant has taken over. But they'll be in the YouTube video. Definitely go follow these gamers. They're all very intelligent, very skilled, very good content. And of course, you're on this channel right now. Follow the stream, subscribe to the stream, subscribe on YouTube, watch all the other TeaTimes, watch all the other videos. There'll probably be a bunch of videos coming. You know, it's the expansion time. It's time to talk about a variety of topics, talk about relics, talk about tier lists. I don't know, some kind of unhinged stuff. But it's going to be good. But anyway, that'll just about do it for now, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to follow everyone, engage with all the social media. And of course, we'll see you next time. Take it easy, gamers. We are out of here. See ya.